Hello, hello, hello. Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. I am just excited today. I'm glad that you all are here with us this morning. We apologize for a slight delay, but we are just so excited that you have been patient and that you're waiting for this great event that we have prepared for you today. I would like to welcome you to the Strategic Influence Tour virtual launch event. Thank you for joining us today. We are honored to have you, and we are excited about the information that we will be sharing with you. We are honored to have you, and we are excited about sharing with you today what we hope will inspire you and give you an opportunity to learn about the importance of applying the principles in the Power of Strategic Influence to achieve your own personal goals, that you will be able to pursue your ambitions with another set of tools that have worked for some very successful individuals. And we believe that if you apply them, you too can experience the same results. My name is Emilio Antonio Guevara, and I will be serving as your host and moderator for today. A little bit about myself. I am currently the founder and CEO of Inyata Inc., as well as another company, Capitalist Conversations. Our mission at Inyata Inc. is to develop a global ecosystem that expands the legacy of successful business leaders, nurturing new generations of entrepreneurs that elevate society through the use of creative imagination and a global vision. This event is in line with our purpose. There are so many entrepreneurs that are doing some amazing things across the world, and our mission is to help them expand their legacy by helping them ensure that their stories are told so that new generations of entrepreneurs can learn from them and future generations will be exposed to and inspired by their accomplishments. Today, we are fortunate to have 7 speakers, but let me just say, they are just not speakers. They are tremendously successful business leaders. They are not just dedicated to building successful businesses, but what you will learn from them, as I have, is that they are all committed to making a difference. Today, we will be joined by Samdura Singh, who is the founder of A Cities Global. She will be sharing a message on the foundation of influence and survival instinct. Steven Schallenberger, who is the founder and president at Synergy Companies and Becoming Your Best Global Leadership, will be sharing a message on strategic influence on doing what matters most. We also have Jacqueline Wales, who is the founder of Jacqueline Wales and Company, which will be sharing a message on the fearless factor at work and strategic influence. We have Mr. Gary Kennedy, who is the managing partner of Double Eagle Ventures and former president of Oracle. He will be sharing a message on making a difference. And we have with us today, Kimberly Carney, founder and CEO of Flashwire, Glossfire, and The Wires, will be sharing a message on taking charge in challenging circumstances. In addition, we will also have Mr. Marcus Ogden, CEO of Ogden Ventures, LLC, and podcast host of Get Authentic with Marcus Show, will be sharing a message on his story of resiliency and leadership and strategic influence. Last but not least, we will have our good friend, our keynote speaker, a gentleman who I've had the pleasure of getting to know, who we've really shared some great stories together, and haven't had the opportunity to meet him and first getting exposed to the book. I just had to meet this man and find out who he was and what was it that drove him to write this book, which I believe will change many, many lives. I've even shared with him the fact that I feel as though that this book kind of gave me the same kind of impact that the 7 Habits of Highly Effective People did as well. And so I believe that this is a message that will really change some lives over many, many years. This keynote speaker, our keynote speaker for today, will be Mr. Gary C Laney. who is the founder and CEO of Success Masters. He's also the author of the best-selling book, The Power of Strategic Influence, 10 Success Factors of Highly Influential Leaders. He will be speaking on a few topics with us today. Those topics will be leadership in crises, the power of strategic influence, and something that's very dear to him, and he has really lived his life by this, and that is to giving back. So we are very excited about the messages that we'll be receiving today, and we're looking forward to learning all that we can, and we're excited again for you to be here, and thank you for joining us today. At this point, what we'd like to do is introduce to you our first speaker, who will be just a wonderful, wonderful person, a great business person, and also somebody that can share some really great information with you about fear. And this young lady's name is Miss Jacqueline Wales. Jacqueline Wales. How are you, Jackie?
I'm great, Emilio. Thank you very much. And I am delighted to be here to talk about Gary's amazing book. And yeah, it's a book that I feel everyone should read, especially if you're an entrepreneur, and especially if you want to be a successful leader. You really need to be reading this particular book. Gary says in his book, first of all, that the first step to being self-reliant is to objectively identify and face your fears. So, of course, you know, I'm the author of The Fearless Factor and The Fearless Factor at Work. Yes. And I've spent several decades understanding fear and, of course, taking personal measures to overcome the debilitating effects of this particular emotion. Yes. As we all know, fear isn't always easy to deal with, but it is necessary if we're to make progress and succeed in life. And Gary's book, of course, lays that out very well indeed. And it's the biggest reason that I do the work that I do as an executive coach and, of course, the creator of transformational strategies for success, because I want to help people overcome the primary fears that get in the way of becoming the best leader that you can be. So here's the thing that I like to talk about. Fear matters to your success. Now, this is an idea that a lot of people would ask why. You know, it makes no sense. But it's a driver for growth. And it's also an obstacle to achieving the things that we desire. Because after all, fear is an emotion, and we frequently allow it to direct our actions, and not necessarily in the right direction. I like to say that fear has a life-saving quality. But in today's world of uncertainty, a lot of people are struggling with their inner fears. And of course, as we build our businesses and we deal with the climate that we're currently living in, you know, a lot of people struggle with not being good enough in order to meet the tasks that they're faced with. Failure, and the result of that is frequently humiliation. And a lot of people actually feel that they don't deserve success. So I like to say that failure and success are like two sides of the same coin. The truth is, as Gary says in his book, you'll never be totally ready for what comes next. And of course, as I pointed out a moment ago, the biggest fear for many, and I've spoken to thousands of people over the last 17 years about this particular topic, is the fear of failure. Because we're all failing our way to success, and it's simply part of the journey. Failure is a choice, a decision, or an expectation that didn't go the way that you had planned. Now, I want you to think about that for a second. We get caught up in that fear of failure. It's like, what if it doesn't work out? Well, what if it does work out? What will it look like? Because too many times we get caught up in our fears around the future and what the future may or may not happen. And we forget that in this moment, this very moment in time, we are able to make some choices and decisions around where we want to go, because this is our only reality. What happened 5 minutes ago, or what I said 2 minutes ago, it's already in the annals of history on the recording. And what's going to happen in 5 minutes from now, who knows? Internet is definitely unreliable a lot of the time. So we have no absolute guarantees on anything except for this very moment of what you can control. And remember what I said a moment ago. Failure is a choice, a decision, or an expectation that didn't go the way that you had planned. And there's only one thing you need to do, and that's take the next step. Maya Angelou, in Gary's book again, said, "You may encounter many difficulties, but you must not be defeated." And this speaks to the resilience of building your network and your influence and going past the fears that might get in the way, because it's just the yada yada in your head, frankly. Most of our fears are not true. We don't have empirical evidence that it's going to be the way that it's going to be. It's the stories that we tell ourselves. And that's a big piece of what I do in my work, to help people understand how to develop a different narrative around what it is. So we learn from our successes, but we learn more from our failures. And we must get comfortable being uncomfortable if we're to succeed at anything. And Tony Robbins said, if you can be comfortable being uncomfortable, it defines the quality of your life. Think about that for a moment. The quality of your life is determined by how comfortable you can be being uncomfortable. Now, when I read The Power of Strategic Influence, I was immensely impressed by what Gary had put together, because what he's really done here is he's created a handbook for building a strong business, not just in the ways in which we build our influence and become influential, but in the building blocks of creating a strong business that sustains and flourishes. And of course, the personal stories of those who are highly influential leaders, and some of them you're going to hear from today, fills the book with great insights on the journeys that these individuals took. Now, Gary uses the analogy of arriving in a strange city where you know no one and you have little money. And the book challenges you to think about how you would not only survive, but become a major influencer in the community. Well, I have to say, from my own personal experience as someone who's undergone such a journey, I can say with complete transparency, it's not easy, but it's definitely doable. I left my home in Edinburgh, Scotland, when I was 16 years old for London. I arrived in the city with very little money and nowhere to stay or even have a job. The person I was supposed to stay with turned out to be a bad influence, and I was left alone and had to figure it out. And my first thought was, find a job, which I did. And then on the first day of work, I found a bed in an apartment shared with some workmates. And from there, it was really simply build a future. I made a lot of mistakes, but I did get my own apartment and I started building a community of friends. And I was young, so building a business wasn't on my agenda, but survival and resilience definitely were. The second time I arrived in a strange city was when I left London for San Francisco. I had one introduction, and once more my first thought was get a job, which I did. And although back then I wasn't supposed to work because I was in fact an illegal alien in this country, not anymore. And that's another story. And eventually I began to put my life together, and I met my husband that I've now been with for 43 years. I've lived on 3 continents, including Europe, Asia, and the United States. And each time I had to build a community, learn the ways of the culture, and redefine who I thought I was, and confronting my fears every single time. Worried about failure or about not making a good impression, this had become my trademark. So if you planted me in Metropolis today, I would find a way to survive and thrive, and also give back to the community that I serve. In The Power of Strategic Influence, you'll find the rules of the road in the 10 success factors that you need to build your community, know how to influence, and become an influencer. In fact, I would say this is the go-to book now, so that I can do this more effectively than I've done in the past. Because previously I would just follow my instincts, which has been good, but this is practical from the deepest trenches of experience book that I've ever read on this subject, and should be required reading for anyone who's even remotely interested in building a sustainable business and community life. So one of the most important elements of being an influencer in this book, and I think in general, is the desire to give back. We all succeed on the shoulders of others. None of us builds our life and career alone. We're all in relationships, driven but by the purpose of what we're doing. And the secret of this amazing book is really learn how to give more before you get, because that's what it's all about. Zig Ziglar said a long time ago, if you give more people what they want, they'll give you what you want. And I've never forgotten that quote. It's been great. So my last words on this today are this. If you're listening or watching this presentation today, and you're still in the process of building your business or career, there's a great deal of wisdom in the contributions from the participants and in this remarkable book that Gary has written from his many, many years of running successful businesses. He's distilled the essence of what it is to become a strategic influencer in today's uncertain world. And in my world, I say, be fearless, see where it gets you. And I think we're waiting for Amelia to come back on again. And once more, I would just say, this book is highly influential. So Emilio, thank you. This has been great. I can't hear you. There you go.
Thank you so much. That was such an amazing message on fear and in relation to strategic influence. I would like to ask you one question, because we do have a couple more minutes left to see if you can, this is this old saying that I heard one time, that fear is equivalent to false evidence appearing real. What would you say to that when you hear something like that? And I'm sure you've heard that in your
that's the most common one. Yes, absolutely. Fear is false expectations appearing real. Think about what I just said a minute ago. What is fear? It's the stories we tell ourselves.
Right. That's right.
So think about that for a moment. What stories are you telling yourself? What is the narrative of your life that maybe keeps you in negative thinking, that keeps you in judgment and blame and criticism and all the other negatives that influence how we show up in the world? So changing the stories and believing, because here's the big one about it. If the biggest fear is I'm not good enough, and that really is the biggest one when you scratch below the surface, what would it look like if you really believed in yourself?
Wow.
That's huge. So in order for you to believe in yourself, you have to change the story of who you think you are. And that's, of course, what the work is that I do, is to help people choose the story of who you think you are. It's all about thinking. We change our thinking, we change our behaviors. But you can't do that without changing the story and taking different actions. And that's really the key to it. And we've all experienced fears, that hesitation, that piece about,
right.
I don't know what to do.
And can I ask you this question, Jackie? I read a book a while ago, years ago, by Dr. Walter Doyle Staples, Think Like a Winner. And he really went into what you're talking about a little bit in terms of perception and fear. That our perceptions are formed mostly by, our environment, right? Whatever that environment was, what we're not aware of is that all of these messages and all of these experiences become a part of our subconscious mind, where it's almost like the hard drive, right? And you find yourself living, being influenced by these thoughts, whether these negative thoughts, these negative beliefs, because a lot of it was stored in your subconscious mind and you weren't even aware of it. And then they cause these perceptions that are most of the time false perceptions that end up becoming that are sort of like the reason and the bottom reason for these fears that you really actually have.
Yeah, there's no question about that. I mean, I like to say when people are dealing with their negative thinking, who's doing the talking? Because I guarantee you it wasn't you that put that idea in your head in the first place. You got it from somebody else who criticized you or judged you, or perhaps themselves were incredibly fearful, and those patterns were kind of adopted by you as a way to deal with life. I know that was true for my background for sure, because it it was very damaging in the early part of my life. But, knowing how to identify that, knowing how to identify that this is not you that's speaking, that's a voice from a previous experience, then you get to change the narrative of what that looks like. So you have to challenge yourself. And that's the biggest and hardest part for a lot of people. How many people don't like change?
Right.
An awful lot of people. I'm one of these people, rare individuals who loves change. And I've had plenty of that in my lifetime. But it's not for everybody. But you've got to be willing to make that commitment to yourself. You've got to be willing to show up for you, invest in you.
If I could ask you from your in relation to strategic influence in your work and in the fearless factor at work, what would be the one tool that you would say that individuals could take and say, you know what, if you really apply this one thing and you do this, this could be the beginning, right? This could be the start to really being able to conquer, those embedded negative thoughts and in your consciousness that allow you to, they stop you from breaking through the barrier of fear. What would be that one thing that you would say to our audience, Jack, that you could leave with them, that's something tangible they could really use and be able to break through that barrier of fear?
It's got to do with your thinking. You've got to stay curious. Question
Curiosity.
Everything. Curiosity. Why do I think that way? What is that about for me? What is it costing me to keep doing what I'm doing? Where am I invested in staying small rather than playing large?
Wow. Wait a minute. I think you might need to say that one again. Why am I playing small?
Playing small as opposed to playing large. Because all of the people on this call today played large. And we've all encountered our own insecurities in order for us to play large. And sometimes you swing for the fences and you think, what the hell am I doing?
Right.
But you do it anyway. So, the old axiom that was written many years ago, feel the fear and do it anyway.
Do it anyway. I think that is a jewel for our audience to take with us on how to conquer fear. So, Jacqueline, thank you so much. We're so grateful for your participation today, for sharing with our audience these tools and this message on how to be able to conquer fear. Thank you so much. We appreciate you and we salute you. Thank you so much, Jacqueline.
Thank you. My pleasure.
All right. Thank you. Bye-bye. Thank you, Jacqueline, for that great message. It's just absolutely, I learned so much from it myself. And I hope that our audience is paying close attention to what we're sharing here today, and looking forward to now moving on to our next speaker, who is an amazing gentleman with an amazing story, Mr. Marcus Ogden. Let me tell you a little bit about him. In 2003, he was drafted into the NFL. And for those who you may not know, that's the National Football League, which is the preeminent institution for football players in America and now in other parts of the world. He was drafted as an offensive lineman. After 5 years playing in the league, he decided to retire and pursue a career in construction and contracting. At the age of 27, Marcus founded a construction company called Caden Premier Enterprises. Now, for most of us, and a lot of you that are watching as entrepreneurs, to start a business at 27 of that level, it's a feat in itself. And so I tell you, that's amazing. At 27, he founded a construction company called Caden Premier Enterprises. The company had fast growth. And in 2010, his business eventually went bankrupt, losing almost $2 million on one project in a matter of 90 days. Most people, that's a tough one to swallow, right? But During his darkest hours, he pulled himself together. He got a part-time job as a custodian, and with hard work and determination became an inspirational keynote speaker, executive coach, best-selling author, and marketing leader. Helped him to not just to build his success. So he didn't just want to build his success, but he made it his mission to also build the success of others. And so with that, Mr. Marcus Ogden, how are you, sir?
I'm doing well, Amelia. How you doing today, sir?
I am doing great. Glad to have you. Now, there's only one thing, Marcus, I have to clear up. You still look 27.
We know what's interesting today. I turned 42 today.
So I just wanted to make sure, you know, is this Marcus Ogden or is this Marcus Ogden's son? You know,
No.
You still look 27, my friend. But
I'm 42 years old today, man.
Wow. Well, you know what, man, happy birthday to you.
Thank you, sir.
For taking out the time to join us today. Gary, you know, I've had conversations. He's spoken so highly of everybody on this panel, and he shared some how excited and how impressed he was with you. And I just reading your bio, I tell you, it's an amazing story, and I can't wait for you to share with our audience what it took for you to, first of all, even be able to go through the process of developing the mindset, both physically and mentally, to even make it into the NFL, succeed there, and then take that same winning mindset and then go into the business world and deal with the challenges, and then get back up and start all over again. And really, how many people are willing to be at that level and then go and take a job as a custodian? Most people wouldn't think in that way, but it just speaks of your humility and so many other virtues that I know you have in order for you to have done and be able to do the things you've done. So Marcus, I'm going to let you now to just share your story and how resiliency and leadership that you've exemplified and strategic influence helped you to be where you are today, running the various businesses that you're running and doing the things that you're also doing, I see, and helping others. So welcome.
Well, Emilio, thanks for having me. I really appreciate it. So I want to talk about, from the book Strategic Influence that Gary wrote, which is an amazing book, the importance of accountability. Okay. Accountability is an internal promise that you make to yourself to do what is necessary to achieve success. If you don't have accountability, if you're not going to be steadfast, accountable, self-reliant on yourself, and I love how in the book Gary talks about being self-reliant is a big part of accountability. If you're not going to bring that to the table, to the forefront, you'll never, ever reach the pinnacle of success for yourself or help others achieve what they want. A little bit about me. I'm from Washington, D.C., went to St. John's College High School, went to Howard University, drafted into the National Football League out of Howard University. I'm actually the only offensive lineman ever drafted from Howard University to the National Football League. Amazing honor. I actually went into Howard's Hall of Fame back in October. My father and I are both in Howard's Hall of Fame, only father and son duo, which is a huge honor for us and our family. The NFL was amazing. And what I read in Gary's book, and Gary didn't know this, I haven't told him, something that Gary said about being accountable to yourself. Jack Del Rio told us when I was a 22-year-old rookie, if you want to be successful, he told our entire our entire drafted and undrafted rookie class this statement: be your own CEO, be your own chief executive officer. And when Jack told us that, and I read something in Gary's book, it brought me back to the 22-year-old kid who was drafted to the National Football League, who didn't really know anything about paying bills, didn't know anything about how to live life, but I was accountable to myself, to the Jaguars, to my teammates, and that started me to have a 6-year NFL career. So what Coach Del Rio said really falls in line with Gary and things he talked about in the accountability section of his amazing book. Now, after the NFL, I struggled for about 6 months. I was an alcoholic. I was a pain-popping addict. I was depressed. I had lots of anxiety, lots of stress, lost my father. There was no accountability, no responsibility. Finally, in 2008, I put the bottle down and I started Caden Premier Enterprises. We became the largest African-American owned subcontracting company in the city of Baltimore and the state of Maryland for 2 years. Now, as the company grew, my ego also grew. And unfortunately, when your ego gets bigger than the good part of your soul, ladies and gentlemen, you could be accountable to no one, you could be responsible to no one, and you're going to be facing your demise sooner than later. Because if your ego is controlling what you do, you're not listening to people, you're not being an effective communicator, you're not being an active listener. All you are doing is worrying about what you want, what you need, when you want it, when you need it. That's not how you live life. So because of my ego, and then I lost, like you said, up between $2 to $3 million in 90 days on a project in downtown Baltimore, I ended up losing everything. My company went bankrupt. My construction career was an 8-figure a year business, up to almost $15 to $16 million a year in revenue, gone. My home in Baltimore, gone. Moved to Raleigh, North Carolina, got here to my rental, both cars repossessed, not in the same month, not in the same week, in the same day. Boom, boom, pull off the lot. I had $400 to my name, but still at this point, there was no accountability, no responsibility. I was blaming everybody else but myself. I was blaming my business partner, my client, my employees, everybody. I was working at Merrill Lynch in downtown Durham, fired from that job. Worked for a construction company the next day, fired from that job 5 days later, fired 2 times in the same week. The only job I could get was a custodian working in downtown Raleigh for $8.25 an hour. This is why one of our signature keynotes is titled The Ego Mistake, from 8 figures to $8.25 per hour. Was working that job, trying to take care of my family. And then God said, okay, Marcus, you're not accountable still. You're not responsible to anybody. This is your last chance. You can either learn from this moment or you can continue just to go play victim, blame everybody, and that's that. I ended up as the custodian having what was called my spoiled milk moment of clarity, where somebody's trash, rotten meat, nasty protruding garbage over my body, my skin, and my clothes. That was the wake-up call. That's when I realized the number one thing missing from my life was accountability. Just like Gary said in his book, if you want to be accountable, you have to be self-reliant, okay? Self-reliance means you have to look in the mirror and depend on you. If you don't want to be successful, or if somebody else wants more for you than you want for yourself, you'll never get to the pinnacle you deserve. So again, that moment, I said, okay, I gotta be self-reliant. Went home, wrote down my 3 biggest strengths. I said, I'm a good communicator. I'm a good storyteller. I wanna help people. Let's try keynote speaking. Tony Robbins did it. He was a janitor. Hey, how hard could it be? Started the business, and one of the laws that I live by is the law of value, which states your true value is determined, your true worth is determined by how much more you give in value than you take in payment. And when I started my speaking business, I was all about trying to make money, 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 no value. For 2.5 years, not one paid job, not one. Got my first paid job April 2016 for Miller Mott College. Still was struggling, still no consistency. Got another job in 2017 for the Buffalo Bills NFL football team. That helped me stay on track. But in 2018, I got coached. I learned from people who knew what I was trying to do and where I was trying to go. I always tell people this whole little scenario. Aristotle became famous because he coached Alexander the Great. Plato taught Aristotle. When Plato died, Aristotle was not given ownership to run the school. King Philip II, Alexander's father, hired Aristotle to teach Alexander mathematics, astrology, science, other things besides war. Philip believed if Alexander only knew war, he would open himself up to attack and fail. Alexander was coached by Aristotle. Alexander took over the world in the ancient times. Everywhere he went, he dropped Aristotle and his teachings, and that's why Aristotle is more known than his teacher, Plato, because he coached somebody that became the world's greatest conqueror in ancient history. Why I say that is because coaching is the pinnacle of accountability to get where you want in life. I got coached, and in the last 6.5 years, we've worked for 47 Fortune 500 brands as a speaker. 47. 3-time best-selling author, consultant, business coach. We have a podcast that's ranked in the top 1.5% in the world, most popular, only after being out for 4 months. We got that title in 2.5 months. And I'm going to tell you right now, accountability was the foundation of our success. If you want to be accountable, like Gary talked about in his book, master these 3 things. Number 1, when it comes to accountability, develop an accountability mirror. Again, develop an accountability mirror. What that means is you can't lie to yourself. If you're trying to get somewhere in life, if you're trying to get to the next level, if you're trying to be successful, you're trying to rise up, you cannot not have an accountability mirror. You have to be honest with yourself at all times. It is absolutely pivotal. Second thing, get an accountability partner. Get someone you can talk to every day, every other day, every week that's going to hold you accountable. Somebody's not going to take, well, I don't feel like doing that today. I don't feel like getting this done today. Like Gary said in his book, you have to make the first step towards getting your life back. So if you don't have an accountability partner to help you stay on track, life can get very, very difficult and very, very arduous. And the last thing, and my gosh, if you don't get anything, get this. Check your ego at the door. It is the biggest silent killer of any individual, man, woman, white, black, Asian, I don't care, Hispanic, I don't care who you are. Ego is the biggest killer of people's success. And you know what's so dangerous about an ego? You can't see it. You can't feel it. If you're not paying attention, you don't know it's there. But if your ego takes over you, you can be accountable to no one. Trust me, that's how I lost my business. That's how I lost everything. And again, I'm going back to Gary's book. I stopped being self-reliant once my ego got bigger than the good part of my soul. So again, in closing, 3 things: develop an accountability mirror, get an accountability partner, check your ego at the door. If you do those 3 things, you could be accountable to whatever you want in life, and you can achieve massive, massive success. Thank you.
Thank you, Marcus. That was just a fantastic message. I appreciate it. I'm sure that our audience learned a lot from it. And I've learned a lot from it. Those three principles: accountability, an accountability partner, and make sure that you leave your ego at the door. Thank you, my friend. I appreciate you. And we, again, thank you for participating in this event, my friend. Thank you.
Thanks for having me.
Okay. All right. And now at this time, we are going to now present our next speaker, another phenomenal business leader and a great individual. Let me just share a few things about this gentleman. His name is Gary D. Kennedy. He is currently the managing partner of Double Eagle Ventures, which is a private venture fund targeting early stage investments. Double Eagle Ventures has been the first to invest in Tenfold, Overstock.com, American School Academy, Remedy Informatics, and AIM Technology, as well as an early investor in January.ai, iDirect, Newmont University, Canop Hills LLC, and Image Learning. From December 2003 to October 2004, he was the founder and chief executive officer of Remedy Informatics, the leading provider of registries for life sciences research and healthcare delivery organization. He served as president and chief executive officer of Tenfold Corporation, a software applications developer. He also served as a mission president for the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints in Sao Paulo, Brazil. He served as president, chief executive officer, and chairman of PRC Inc., a systems integration company. Prior to joining PRC, Mr. Kennedy served in various management and executive positions at Oracle Corporation from 1982 until 1990. His positions included national sales manager, senior vice president of Oracle Corporation, and ending as the president of Oracle USA. He was one of the first handful of professionals employees at Oracle. He served as marketing manager for Intel Corporation as well, and he holds a BA in finance from the University of Utah and a master's degree in business administration from Northwest University's Kellogg Graduate School of Management. Help me to welcome Mr. Gary D. Kennedy. How are you, sir?
Doing great. How are you?
Doing fantastic. It is a pleasure to have you on here. We are looking forward to your message on making a difference. We really appreciate you taking the time out of your busy schedule, and you have such an amazing career in business and developing businesses and growing people. But the fascinating thing about your story is how much you talk about making a difference. So our audience, I leave you with Mr. Gary D. Kennedy to share his message. Thank you, sir.
Thank you. My wife and I live in the beautiful Heber Valley. It has to be one of the most beautiful places on earth. We have a world-class fly fishing stream that is 5 minutes from our house. And it's a wonderful place to retire to. Yet in the last 3 years, I've averaged 2 fishing trips per year. If you think about it, that's missing out on a great opportunity. But that's because I've spent my time on something that I consider to be an even greater opportunity. I've spent tens of thousands of hours writing a book that is titled Same Thing, Only Different. Why have I sacrificed all this time, not only away from fly fishing, but away from hiking, pickleball, even sacrificing time away from my grandchildren? Well, the reason is because I believe in making a difference. And I believe at this point in my career that the most likely way that I can make a difference is by writing this book and some other things that will go along with it. As you heard earlier, I was one of the first employees at Oracle. I think spent 9 years there. I think most would suggest that I made a difference at Oracle, and I feel good about that. I probably made a difference in some other business and charitable endeavors, as well as some personal things with my family. But it's never seeming, at least to me, to be enough. I always need to continue making a difference. A man that I respect greatly said, "Gary, you'll only grow old once you stop making a difference." And I've found that to be the case. And that's why I'm so focused on not only helping Gary with this book, but on doing things on my own. I'm convinced that every one of us has an innate, maybe even a primal desire to really make a difference. This instinctual yearning that we have is the moving force behind all of our actions. Even young children that set up a lemonade stand do so because they want to make a difference. Maybe they want to make a difference in terms of the amount of spending money they have, or maybe they enjoy runners coming by and drinking from their joggers coming by and drinking from their lemonade stand, but they want to make a difference. I'm convinced that successful businesses or successful leaders in every walk of life want to make a difference. Making a difference means that the results of your endeavor are better than it would have been without you. I'm convinced that one of the most important aspects of making a difference is facing the reality that we need to sacrifice to make a difference. I've never made a difference, or I've never seen anyone make a difference unless they were willing to make a sacrifice. Think about someone who gets up at 5 o'clock in the morning to go to the gym. They probably don't get up because they enjoy getting up early. They go there because they want to make a difference, whether the difference is in their physique or their stamina or their health, or maybe it's just to have more friends that they meet at the gym. But the purpose is that they want to make a difference. And after some time, I'm sure they'll sit down and evaluate, are they making a difference? Are they able to lift more weights? Are they, is their stamina increased? And to the extent that it is, they'll continue doing it. Making a sacrifice is essential in all of our lives if we're willing to make a difference. Take this discussion, for example. I certainly could have prepared this discussion and agreed to merely fill a place on the agenda. I'm sure my friend Gary would have continued talking to me if I had just mailed it in, so to speak. But I decided that this was an opportunity to make a difference. And I could have perhaps entertained you with anecdotes from my career, but really focusing on how you can make a difference and how I can help you make a difference seemed to me to be the best use of my time. And frankly, it completely changed the way I prepared to give this talk. When I talk about sacrifices, sometimes it's a personal sacrifice of your time and efforts. Sometimes it's financial. When it is financial, you need to sit down and count the costs and ask yourself, am I really willing to make the commitment that's required, not just the time commitment, but the financial commitment that's required to make a difference here. And I implore you, if you're not willing to, don't start. It's not fair to you. It's not fair to anyone who's involved with you. If you're unwilling to make the kind of sacrifice that's required to make a difference, then you need to sit down and analyze what your motives really are and how you might create a greater desire to make that difference. Once you've agreed that you're going to make a difference and you're willing to make a sacrifice, then the next thing you need to do is you need to make a plan to make a difference. I suppose you could make a plan that didn't make a difference, but that wouldn't make a lot of sense. Sometimes a simple plan is sufficient. If you want to expand your mind, maybe your plan is nothing more than deciding to read for an hour a day. In most cases, if you really want to make a difference, it's going to take a more detailed plan. I personally prefer the objectives and key results methodology in terms of making a difference, but there are many others that would work equally well. Before you define your objectives and your key results, I encourage you to define what I call a mission. A mission is another word for the realm or the domain in which you're going to make a difference. So once you've defined your mission, then you decide what objectives will get you to the place you want to be. And then, of course, more specifically, what are the tangible actions you're going to take in terms of key results that will allow you to achieve your mission, which will in turn which will allow you to achieve your objectives, which will in turn fulfill your mission. When you define your plan, make sure you include metrics. You need to measure your results as you go along. It's very difficult to improve if you aren't able to tangibly measure how you're doing. It's also difficult to take the next step, which I'll discuss in a second, which is adjusting your plan. Once you define metrics, make sure that you haven't defined the most easy metrics or the simplest to collect. I know it's a temptation to do that, especially when something is facing you and it's so easy to collect. But if it doesn't really have to do with measuring whether you're making a difference or not, then it's pointless to collect it. It's much better to collect a few metrics that reflect reality than it is to have pages and pages of metrics that really don't matter that much. It should be obvious that to make a difference, you need to do things differently. You can't do things the same. You can't do the same things in the same way that you've always done them, and then expect to have a different result. Most of us understand this intellectually, but we don't understand what things we need to change and what things we need to keep the same. You could plan to change everything, but that's probably not a good plan because you wouldn't be taking advantage of all the learning from the past. Or I suppose you could plan to change nothing, but if you plan to change nothing, then why do you think that it's going to make a difference? Why do you think it's going to lead to a different outcome? I don't think it will. The last step is to analyze your progress and adjust your plan as necessary. This is extremely important. If you're the one holding yourself accountable, in other words, you're the one deciding what difference you want to make and how you want to make it, make sure that as you hold yourself accountable, make sure that you're intellectually honest with yourself. That goes without saying, but if you think about it, sometimes we try to fool ourselves. And there in my mind, there's nothing that is more debilitating than to be dishonest with yourself. Maybe that was the reason that Polonius said to his son Laertes, this above all else, to thine own self be true. Making a difference is a process. It's not a single event. And rarely will the plan you put in place lead to precisely the difference that you want it to make. So what happens is you'll put your plan in place, look at your metrics, see how you're doing, and then make adjustments, and then you'll re-engage with a plan that is hopefully more directed toward solving the problem. Let me comment on something that's a little subtle, but very important to understand. Sometimes you define the perfect plan, or seemingly define the perfect plan, and you go forward and engage, and you measure the results, but they aren't what you want them to be. In other words, you have agreed to provide X outcome on Y date. And when X isn't what you want it to be, our first reaction is, oh, let's change everything, and we flail about trying to decide what all the changes that need to be made are. Well, in truth, sometimes it isn't that we got the X wrong, we got the Y wrong. In other words, the actions you're taking, the actions you put in place will precisely lead to the result that you want. The problem is the timing of it. And I can't urge you too strongly to analyze carefully, and in some cases, stick with the plan. I remember we had a region at Oracle that was just not performing anywhere near what we expected them to. They were the last region, and it was 10 months into the year. I went down there, and rumor was that I was going to fire half the staff and kick ass and take names, as they would say. And I went down there, spent the day with them, understood what their activities were, understood every account and what the status was. And we all got together for a meeting after the day was over. And I said, I'm not going to fire anybody. You are all doing the right thing. Your management's doing the right thing. Stay the course. And they did. And they went from last to second. And most of the people who were with me I was able to greet them in Hawaii at our annual incentive event because they made their numbers for the year. The second hardest thing is to see that everything appears on the surface to be going well, but you instinctually know you need to make changes. And changing in the midst of success is just as hard, almost as hard, as staying the course in the midst of seeming failure. It takes courage to handle both of those, and as you learn and as you move forward, you gain the experience and the courage to say, stay the course, or to say, let's change, even though it doesn't appear that the results don't seem to warrant change. Now, in closing, let me just make a broader application of this principle. Can you imagine what would happen if millions, maybe hundreds of millions of people decided that they want to make a difference? The world as we know it would not be the same. I fear that too many people live and die without ever making a difference. I know some of them, I know many of them, and probably you do as well. And what an unfulfilling life to have lived here for one day or 100 years without having made a difference. As I look back at my life, the times that were most satisfying were the times that may have been challenging, but I was earnestly striving to make a difference. I was committed to make a difference, and I was willing to stretch in any way possible, in any way necessary, in order to make a difference. Thank you for your time. I've enjoyed speaking with you today.
Thank you, Gary. Thank you so much for that wonderful message on making a difference. If I may ask, do you have any idea when the book will be out? I mean, that title, same thing, only different. I mean, that pretty catchy. So just wanted to know if you could share with our audience, perhaps when we can expect that amazing book that you will be publishing for us to read.
Well, it's in the hands of a publisher, but as Gary Laney would tell you, that can be a short time or a long time, depending on how many they want to make.
Well, please.
If you have 10 seconds, I'll just tell you that the emphasis for that book, those that have played football know this. I mean, I remember once saying, I know this play, I was a middle linebacker. I said to everybody, it's the same thing as last time, but they ran a completely different play, fooled us all, scored a touchdown. And in the end, the guy from the other team ran by me and said, yeah, the same thing, only different.
Okay, that's a great story. Well, when you do, please let us know, and we will make sure that we share that message with our audience and let them know so that we can help make sure to be able to follow up and get the rest of this message through your book. So thank you so much, Gary. I appreciate you, and we thank you for being a part of this event.
You're welcome.
Okay. Wow, what a great message from Gary D. Kennedy. Just an amazing message and of making a difference. And we all will look forward to his book, and we'll make sure that we get that message out to you when the book is released. At this time, we are now going to bring on our next speaker, another phenomenal. Wow, I tell you what, this has been an amazing experience, just listening to all of these entrepreneurs and business leaders that are speaking on strategic influence and how they've been able to use it to be successful. And so let's now go on to our next speaker, which is Somdura Singh. She is a serial entrepreneur and angel investor, currently operating her third entrepreneurial venture. Acetus Global Inc. is a $150 million revenue generating cross-border, cross-marketplace e-commerce accelerator. She is born in Kolkata, India, to doctor parents. She is a first-generation entrepreneur in her family. She finished her early education in India and moved to the US for higher studies. She constantly pushes herself to propel ahead with a stronger vision. She's worked in the corporate field and translated her interests and expertise into her first venture, an ad tech firm. She has had 2 highly successful multi-million-dollar exits before she founded Acetus Global. Living her life on the edge by the adage, every adversity comes with an opportunity. She has a vision of making Acetus Global a $1 billion revenue generating enterprise by 2025 and become a shining example for women entrepreneurs across the world. She has been conferred the prestigious Women Entrepreneur of the Year Award by Indian Achievers Forum in association with the Ministry of Electronics and Information Technology for her outstanding professional achievements and contributions towards nation building. She has also been bestowed with the coveted Times 40 Under 40 honor and featured in Fortune India's 50 Most Powerful Business Women edition. She has served as the youngest and only woman vice chairperson of NASCOM Product Council and has been the first woman of Indian origin on the board of Philip Kotler's Kotler Impact. She has facilitated the government of India to form the visionary Women Entrepreneurship Platform by NITI Ayog, which has helped lakhs of enterprising and revolutionary women across India on their entrepreneurial journeys. She is an ardent believer in giving back to society in the form of her not-for-profit organization that invests in the youth and empowers them with digital skills in the technologically driven era. Her foundation also helps entrepreneurs from Tier 1 and Tier 2 cities raise money for their ventures. As an angel investor over the last 10 years, she has invested in some of the most prominent startups across the globe, such as BookPad, Tukitaki, Wiggles, to name just a few. She works with Kettle.org to fund surgeries of young children whose parents cannot afford the cost. She has authored the best-selling books, Decoding Digital, Unlocking Digital Barriers and Stories from New India, Policies, Hope, and Change. She is at present writing her third book. She is a global mentor at Google Launchpad and mentor of change at Atal Innovation Mission and Government of India. She has been presented with the India Achiever Award in 2021, Impact Entrepreneur Award for Social Innovation, presented by IEE in association with UN Women and Amity University, London. She has also been bestowed with the 2019 Mentor of the Year by the government on Andhra Pradesh, 2017 Digital Leadership Award and Social Innovation by Times of India, and the 2017 Women Leadership Award by Economic Times. Welcome, Somdura.
Firstly, Emilio, thank you so much for such a lovely and a long introduction indeed.
Yes.
I'm first of all, I would like to apologize because of some technical issues. I was not able to log into this session earlier, but I'm honored to be here, and glad we were able to do this. And thank you so much, because it's such an honor to be a part of Gary's book. Someone I feel that he's not only a disruptor, somebody who's a strong visionary, and somebody who believes in bringing together great minds that could actually change the entire diaspora in itself. So very, very honored and very enlightened to be a part of the session today.
Well, thank you so much. We know as busy as you are, and being in another country, and yet making way to be a part of this event. We are all grateful for you to be here, and we're thanking you for taking your time to share your thoughts with us today. So at this time, we will turn it over to you to share your wonderful message. So thank you so much.
Thank you, Emilio. Again, truly, it's an honor. I think when I got introduced to Gary, it was on my first call with Gary that I felt like I've known him from eons. Someone who came with his kind of knowledge, his kind of vision, and the focus that he had about trying to create a book, not only trying to represent the generation of today and how people like us are trying to disrupt and build something unique, and changing the nuances of what entrepreneurship looked like a couple of decades ago and what it looks like now. Surviving through the challenges and emerging victorious, and most importantly, taking an adversity and converting that into an opportunity. The book is become like now pretty much a handbook for every entrepreneur, every startup, to basically look at what is that they can learn from the strategic influencers who are trying to kind of build this change and add this value to the ecosystem. When I started interviewing for the book, Gary had a very, very strong vision of how to articulate my journey so that it could not only inspire more women entrepreneurs like me in the urban city, but actually the rural side of people, where people could actually envision doing something for themselves despite whatever challenges they may encounter. Making the most judicious use of my time, and I think the ideal way for me to articulate this journey would be that the power of strategic influence is not just a book that shares with you the journeys of these great entrepreneurs, visionaries, people who are creating a huge change and an impact in the ecosystem, but it is about learning. It is about learning what to do and also what not to do. I think all our journeys go through a series of ups and downs. And most importantly, it is about that articulation and looking at the positive side of the downs, and looking at failure as a first attempt in learning, rather than actually thinking that it's a negative connotation of falling down. When I started sharing my journey with Gary, it was about how do you create impact? How do you create impact? By constantly challenging yourself and outdoing the challenges that an environment or a society poses to you. My journey was about letting my physical disability as a child not come in the way of my vision to change the dynamics of my life and what I do with business today. Having born with a brain tumor and spending a few years of my life on a wheelchair just taught me one thing, that you can't go lower than that. So all you have to do is look up. Every time somebody gives you, or rather belittles you, it's a way for you to tell yourself how amazing I am, because I'm a miracle. If I can survive this, I can survive through anything, absolutely anything. And I think that's where the seed of entrepreneurship came into being, right? Entrepreneurship is an everyday hustle. You never stop doing, you never stop thinking, you never stop emerging, and you never stop evolving. And evolution is the only constant. So even when I was a first-time entrepreneur, and I'm a third-time entrepreneur, there's only one thing that has changed in this journey of over 12 years: experience, learnings, and learnings from the mistakes that I've made to doing what I can do today. And this is not going to be the same when I do the same thing a few years down the line. So the power of strategic influence is to be able to share that journey with utmost honesty and conviction, is to not shy away and portray only the miracles of your life, but also to talk about the challenges, because unless they exist, the miracles would never happen. Unless we are grateful for the learnings we've had through our downs, you can never appreciate what you have through the ups. And that's the beauty of entrepreneurship, because it teaches you to appreciate both in its utmost uniformity. And the power of strategic influence is to create that around your surroundings. Today, I am only what I am because of the people that I hire. A great journey of an entrepreneur is to know what you're not good at. If you know what you're not good at, then you hire people who are better than you. And only when you're surrounded by people better than you, do you evolve and emerge to build a company that actually leaves a legacy behind you. So you can never be a good entrepreneur just by yourself. So that is the power of strategic influence. And that's what the book articulates. It talks about how to create that ecosystem around you, how to ensure that your journey is not stagnant, how to ensure you're agile as a leader, how to ensure that you're constantly learning. And what Gary has been able to capture with all these 12 people is absolutely mind-blowing. You know, I have read the book again and again because every time I read it, it's a different narration. It's because you're learning something new you overlooked the last time. So to make this a very, very productive summary of my experience of doing this is that take a risk in life. If you win, you lead. But if you fail, you'll guide. And guidance has immense power as just leading is. So as an entrepreneur, your hustle is a part of your journey, your learning, and that hustle teaches you survival. And that survival is what creates your legacy. So Emilio, thank you so much. I'm truly, truly grateful for the opportunity to do this again and to support Gary, to support this amazing book. And my salute to all the wonderful people who've been featured in this book, because each one of them is an inspiration by themselves, and their journeys are actually what is going to drive a lot of young aspiring entrepreneurs or startups to actually change the dynamics of what the future holds. So thank you. And I'm truly, truly grateful for this opportunity.
Thank you, Sondula. That was just a great message. I think that a lot of that our audience will take away quite a bit from those jewels that you shared with us about, how to never give up and never give in, especially with when you're faced with some of the challenges that you faced, particularly growing up. But I do have a question for you, because we do have about 3 or 4 more minutes, and I wanted to,
sure,
and this goes back to, your story and growing up in India and now being a global business leader. What was that mindset? I know that you shared some of it because I read your story in the book, and you went through, you took us from A through Z of that process. But what I would like for you to share with our audience is, what was the one thing that you could share, particularly being a young woman and a woman entrepreneur, and you've received such accolades for what you've accomplished as a woman entrepreneur. We know that it can be challenging sometimes. What is the one thing that you would share with our audience that, that being strategic, with your influence helped, to propel you to do the things that you're doing now? Building generating $150 million revenue year business, and then having the audacity to say that it will be generating $1 billion in 2025. I think some people want to know, how do you go from, not even having that business to starting that business, and then developing that kind of mindset and using strategic influence to get to where you are now, and then already have in mind what you will accomplish in 2025, by 2025. Can you just share that last thought with us?
Absolutely, Emil. I think that's a fantastic question, right? Means you're not born entrepreneur. You always have a great idea. I think what separates a good entrepreneur from a great entrepreneur is a fantastic execution, right? What I'm building with Asidus actually had its seed in my previous company. So like I said, so this is my third venture. My first company was an ad tech company that got acquired by Siebel. Then I went on to building my second venture, which was a bunch of D2C brands selling on Amazon and Walmart, right? And we used reverse engineering. So what we did was we looked at what people searched for, We looked at the competitive landscape and looked at what didn't exist, and that's how we build brands. So we reversed the demand generation process. When I was building these brands and I was trying to take them from one country to the other, is how the seed of Asidus came into being, because cross-border, cross-marketplace was a challenge nobody was solving. You had to look for different distributors to go to different markets. You had to look for different fulfillment arms to go to different markets. So we wanted to disrupt that. The power of strategic influence was in 3 parts: knowing the problem that you're solving, understanding the resources you need to solve. So getting the right people on board, getting the right investors on board, getting the right partners on board. Do it by yourself alone. So you need a great partner ecosystem to be able to do that. Most importantly, what technology, the tech platform that you're going to build that will differentiate you is something that you need to be fully aware of, and ensuring that we file for IP. So we have 2 patents with USPTO. So we did that because that is what is going to differentiate us with our competition, right? What is going to be our platform. The part of strategic influence comes when you're aware that what are those fundamentals that you are actually building and solving. Is it scalable? Is it sustainable? And will it be long-term? The reason I can say we'll do $1 billion in 2025, when Gary was writing this book, we were already at 150. This year, we're going to do about 312 million. We're already on the path to get to that number. So we created the strategic roadmap. Yes, we created, and we just raised our Series A, So we created the roadmap because we knew the visibility, and we're a profitable company. So we knew the visibility. Now you also talk about women entrepreneurship. I think the challenge with women entrepreneurship is that we call it women entrepreneurship. To me, entrepreneurship is genderless. Entrepreneurship has no gender. It just has an attitude. The first thing that changed me in my entrepreneurship journey is to stop seeking for empowerment. We have bad days. Every human being has good days and bad days. But my bad days are not because I'm seeking empowerment from another gender. My bad days are because I'm trying to figure out how to solve a problem that I'm facing, and I may not have the solution then and there. 1, we don't need empowerment. 2, I don't believe in the concept of feminism, because you don't hear about machoism, right? Men don't talk about machoism because it's about community. What we need is women supporting women and women supporting men, so we get support from them too. Rather than saying we're not supported, we're seeking, we're not getting. I am what I am because of all the investors. Most of the investors on my cap table are men. I have somebody like Gary who supported me and wrote my story in his book. I have a phenomenal life partner who supports me and stands by me so that I can attain the vision. So when people say behind every successful man, there is a woman, I say behind every successful woman, there are a dozen men. Because we only need to ask. Only when you ask do you get. Then you say, oh my God, okay, I have this problem. This is the issue. No, you ask, find a solution, and that's what takes you forward. So breaking into 3 parts, the execution is an unparalleled aspect that takes a business to the next level. Getting the right team and right resources requires awareness for you not to know as an entrepreneur what you're not good at. And the other thing is resilience, which is super important, which means you ask for help. It's okay to not be perfect. It doesn't exist. We're human. We're all here on a mission trying to accomplish something. We all want to get somewhere. If we can do it together, nothing like it. So these are the things that changed the game for me. I was not this person when I started my first company, Emilio. And I'm not going to be this person when I exit this company. So my vision is to take it IPO. And I know that when I want to step down after the IPO, because I want the second generation to kind of, take it up. But I'm aware. And I think that is the change that I've seen in myself as an entrepreneur in my journey in the last decade.
Wow, that was a fantastic answer. And I think that our audience, I think you left something that we will be able to take with us to grow our own businesses. So thank you so much, Sondura. Thank you for taking the time out. We're grateful.
Thank you.
And please be safe out there as you're driving, reaching your destination. And we look forward to having you at another time. Thank you so much. Appreciate you.
I'm very humbled. Thank you, Miriam. Thank you, Gary. Bye-bye. Have a good one.
Bye. Wow, what a powerful message that was, and just so grateful that she took the time out to be with us, as all the other speakers that have been with us so far. We just have to really give them an applause, because very busy people, yet they found the time to be with us today. So thank you again, Somdura. And at this particular time, we're now ready to introduce our next speaker, who is another amazing young lady. I tell you, Gary, I applaud you, my friend. You had some amazing contributors to the book, and as we're hearing him speak today, it's just a phenomenal. And you had some phenomenal women on here that are making a tremendous difference in the world. And with that, on that note, I'm going to now introduce this young lady, Kimberly Carney. Kimberly Carney is the founder and CEO of The Wires, an innovative two-sided marketplace home to FastWire and its sister platform, Glosswire. With over 20 years of experience in marketing for wireless and tech companies and 15 years leading, I have to stop for a second because Gary, every one of the speakers that are contributing to you, they all look so young. So
I'll take that.
20 years of experience. Like I told the Marcus, I thought you were 27. So
wow.
With over 20 years of experience in marketing for wireless and tech companies and 15 years leading in the multi-brand retail space, Kimberly is at the perfect intersection to feel the pulse of the fashion, beauty, tech, and commerce landscape. In 2018, she saw an opportunity in the fashion sector to launch a low-cost, scalable solution to help emerging and established fashion designers succeed with discoverability and the opportunity to acquire new global customers. Kimberly combined her previous experience in mobile and tech with a fashion knowledge and industry experience to develop a platform where emerging and established brands could coexist in one space, providing valuable data for the industry as a whole. This drive to bridge the connection between consumers and designers was the catalyst for Kimberly to launch FastWire. After successfully disrupting the fashion space, she recently launched into the beauty industry with Glosswire. Glosswire integrates the same technology with a focus on curation, personalization, education, and community. Kimberly researched the beauty landscape and quickly identified the growth in the digitization of beauty and already proving to be a front runner by offering a dynamic technological solution. Kimberly has a unique perspective into fashion and beauty's interplay of data and marketability. She's a rare mix of fashion, beauty, and tech with an entrepreneurial spirit. She has an innate talent to know what the market needs and delivers it through passion, vision, drive, and authenticity. Simply put, she is a trailblazer within the retail digital sector. She has also been listed in CEO magazine as one of the top 20 most dynamic CEOs of 2020. Welcome, Kimberly Carney. We appreciate you being here with us and taking time out of your precious schedule to join us and share some thought with us about how were you able to do what you have done and share a message with us. So at this point, Kimberly, I leave the stage to you. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much for the lovely introduction. First and foremost, I want to thank Gary for having me here today and for putting me in his book. When I first met Gary, it was very similar. I felt like I knew him forever. And to be able to speak with him and connect with him, and we shared, the same values of family and really just understanding Gary's mission with this book was so fascinating to me. And I remember when I was introduced to him, I was so scared to get on a Zoom with him because I thought, oh my gosh, will he put me in his book? What if I fail? And I think even when you have successes, you still get nervous before meetings. And Gary was this like superhuman. Because I stalked him on, Google and went through everything and read as much as I could about him. And as I do when I have to meet with somebody. And it was so great because immediately I just felt comfortable speaking with him, and it was so natural and it felt so conversational. And he really listened to my story and really took an understanding, which really led to my chapter, which was on Success Factor 2, self-reliance. And really today, what I want to speak about is, how that relates to me building a personal sphere and actually personal and professional sphere of influence. early on, back in my, when I was in my 20s, I thank you for the 27 reference, but back in my early days, I worked for AT&T and I was in tech, and I stayed in tech through .com until I got married and had children. And then when I was ready to go back to work, I decided that I would open my own marketing company because I had such a strong background in marketing, and I was still connected to my former CEOs that I could, take different jobs for. I was hired by a boutique to do her event, and I went on a buying trip with her. And in that moment, I'd always loved fashion, and I thought, wow, I should open a store. How hard can it be? I was a VP of marketing. I learned that opening a store with a business partner was way more challenging than I could have imagined, because I understood the marketing and sales side, but I didn't understand the operational side. And fortunately, one of my former CEOs, which goes back to really, creating your personal sphere of this influence, I was able to stay connected. And he came into town and was connected. His wife was, an executive at Neiman's, and he was like, show me your P&Ls. And I said, I have graphs. And he laughed. And fortunately, he taught me, showed me the back end, and really took his time out to really help me understand how to run a business, both on the operational and on the sales and marketing side. And I learned really quickly that just because you're an expert in one area doesn't necessarily mean you can take on another area without help from your network. Once I was able to buy out my business partner and move forward with the store myself, I had a very successful store for, 15 years. But during that time, I really saw, like Emilio mentioned, that fashion was adapting to digital, and I thought there has to be a way to connect the brands and consumers. But first, I would have to get people to understand that fashion could be tech, which was not easy. So I came up with the idea of Fashwire, and at first, I was going to do it alone and hired my first developer. Didn't work out. And then I reached out to my former tech connections through Microsoft, through AT&T, and really ask the questions of, what's the best way to go about this? How do I make us tech? How do I do this? And in that moment, I really started building that sphere of influence, because I was able to really get that feedback that I needed. And then I went in to hire my second developer and formed an advisory board. And I always recommend to everybody, really bring in people that know and have more knowledge and are experts in their fields where you're not. You don't need to be the smartest person in the room. You need to be very smart about your vision and what you can contribute. But it really takes a village to succeed as a startup, or I think in any business, whether you're a startup or corporate. You really have to rely on your team and the people that support and follow you. I then, after the first year of doing that, and I'm going back to some of these other presentations, which were so amazing because you talk about failure. Well, after that first year, I was able to go out, I was able to get investment through this network of influencers. And then I realized after a year, I looked at what was built, and I thought, gosh, there's no way we can get this to market and really build what we want to do. How do we start over? How do we do this? How do I tell them? And I really just decided to rip the Band-Aid off and just say, here's where we are. We need to hire a new developer. We need to start over, and we really need to be more innovative in how we go forward. So I met my now development partner, who's amazing, at a tech show. One thing that I really did to establish us as tech was I started putting us in tech shows as well. I think that's another thing that is super important when you're building your brand, is who do you want to be? Really, who are you? Who is the DNA that makes up your company and your vision? And it was really important to me to be seen as tech. And I would go into these meetings of investment or brands, and they would look at me like, okay, just another fashion app. We all know that look. And I'm like, no, this is going to be tech. And I started putting us in TechCrunch, and Then I started developing a team, and it was so great because, those little successes matter as well. So we would be at TechCrunch and we really wanted that green little badge, like featured startup. And it took us 2 years to get there, but we did it. And then that led to eventually putting me on stage, which again, I know many people, entrepreneurs that I've spoken to through our own network, fear getting on stage. Well, so did I. I was terrified and I wasn't great, but I did it. And that's how you learn and that's how you move forward. When we were ready to launch, I had continued building this network of investors and technology experts and retail experts to really bring this together. And by the time the pandemic hit, we had reached 200 brands from about 20 countries, really just from going to trade shows and getting in front of the brands. And back in the .com days, we cold called. So we basically what I would call cold walk to shows, and we would introduce ourselves. And when the pandemic hit and retail shut down, we had really proved us to be a reliable platform, and it showed how we were moving forward in digital innovation in a place they could rely on when retail wasn't available. And that led us to new team members, which were also through the connections. We were able to bring on a VP of marketing who was connected to different editorial out in New York. And that got us in front of new people. Brands were jumping on. And this was because this team who we had been in front of the shows and building those personal relationships, they knew us, they knew who we were. And when the pandemic hit, we did get a little scared, like, how are we going to do this? But we came together on Zoom and we continued building these relationships. We continued growing our team. We were able to get in Oprah. We were in Marie Claire. I won Startup Grind's first global virtual tech pitch competition. And that was the first time fashion won in tech. And that was my goal all along. And that was so great. And that happened in September of 2020. Then my team came to me and they really wanted to do beauty. So I was hesitant because I know that investors really want you to stay in your lane, but our platform really encompasses many verticals, and beauty made sense. And we were able to launch Glosswire in 2021 with 50 brands. And today we're at nearly 300 from 25 plus countries. And it really was because of this network of people that I put together and that came together and really worked together to help us grow. And that led to more investment. And today we recently just won Best Fashion Marketplace in the Glossy Awards. And to our team, it was such an accomplishment because it really, to be able to pull together as a startup, it really takes a team of organized, innovative, and passionate individuals. And I am so fortunate that I have been able to bring together this group from all over the world, and every single person has an integral role in the upkeep and customer service of our brands and platform demands. And great things are possible when you have a team that believes in you and is passionate about the purpose of your company. And that includes your advisory board or your network of people and your investors, because every single person who is part of your network really is what drives your business forward, because you really can't do it alone. And I know I could not do it alone without building this network around me. And Gary's book was so great because it not only confirmed what I was doing, but it also helped me be better at it, and also made me appreciate this network that I have built around me, because I had never had it presented to me that way, if that makes sense. And so Gary's book is so great because you can read all these different stories of these entrepreneurs and industry leaders that really helps you navigate your business going forward. And that is so great, because before I could always, whether it was connections or meeting people, but now I have this book that I can go to and I can refer to. And just thank you, Gary, because I attribute part of my success this last year to you and putting me in your book and really helping me understand the power of strategic influence. Sorry, I can't hear you.
Thank you, Kimberly. That was such a fantastic and great message of how you took those steps to get, where you are today. We have a couple of minutes, so I do have a question for you, right? Because I read your story in Gary's book, in the Power of Strategic Influence, and there was one section in there that I thought was really it was comical, but at the same time it spoke to the power of strategic influence, and then also it was a lesson to learn there about you really don't know who you might be talking to that could be the very person that could end up helping you. You're laughing because you must know already who I'm talking about, right?
Talking about my development partner.
Right.
I like to call him my work husband now.
the story of, and I hope those that are our audience watching, if you have not read the book, please pick up the book. Go to GaryCLaney.com and get the book, because it really is an amazing book. And the stories, as you said, Kimberly, you read all the other people's stories, and everybody's story is fascinating. But there's one point I have to ask you about, the fact that you were having some technical issues at your booth, and then this guy comes over and he says to you, "Hey, I see that you're a little stressed out. How can I help?" And you say, "Well, we don't. This is not a dog ad. This is you."
Well, I sounded a little snotty. I'll admit it. I was like, "This is tech. This isn't animals." It was, and he was like, and he was so nice.
Correct me if I'm wrong, but you go to the guy next to the next booth and you ask him, and you say, "Well, who did your ad?" And he says to you, "Hey, the guy that you just sent away, right?"
The doghouse. He said to the guy he sent to the doghouse, and I was like, "Oh," I'm like, "What do we do?" He's like, "He's pretty cool. He'll come back." And then, his name's Human Hamza with Developing Now, and he came back and he said, "Hey, let me get you."
But tell us a little bit about. What did you learn from that? Like, what did you say to yourself later that day, and you thought about that experience that just happened, and this one incident, this one situation basically changed the entire trajectory of your company. So can you share a little more light on that? We have about 2 more minutes, a little light on that.
I think that was a lesson in, like you said, you started, if you don't know who you're talking to. And, sometimes when you're so stressed out, you cannot get out of your bubble. And this, I see this person just walking back and forth, and I felt like he was just kind of judging us, and he wasn't, he was, going to his client. And I just assumed he was part of their app because he was over there. And I think learning not to assume who you're talking to is, don't make assumptions without asking questions first. And when he came over, what I should have done is said, "Well, we actually have a tech problem, and I'm trying to find somebody in tech to help me, but I can't see everyone's working." And so and then that's when, once you have to be able to, really read the room, as they always say, but also not make preconceived notions of who you think people are. And from that, and I think, one thing that, I've always done, which I've done really, I've always, whether, it's the server at the restaurant or whether it's the janitor in the building, I always love conversation with people and getting to know who people are. Like my dad started as a janitor and then became a professional, one of the top businessmen in Seattle. And for me, really just remembering that, to always be gracious and lead with, lead with humility, and lead with, understanding that just because you have this notion of somebody doesn't necessarily mean that that's actual. And from that point on, I have never made that mistake again. And I'm so grateful because, not only was he forgiving, but he thought it was funny, actually, because he said I was funny about it. But he just, not only that, he wanted to be a part of us, and that, I think, and he's still with us. He can't leave now.
Wow, isn't that amazing? So I just thought that would be a great way to close out your session, because it just spoke volumes about you don't know who might be influential and help you to expand your influence, right?
Absolutely. And don't let stress get the best of you. Just remember that too will pass.
That's right. Thank you, Kimberly. I appreciate you so much. It was
Thank
just a
you.
great
Thank you,
message.
Gary. You
Thank
guys
you
are
for
amazing.
being
And
with
to the
us.
wonderful speakers. Gosh, you're amazing. It's just been such an honor to be here with all of you today.
And we have been honored to have you. Thank you, thank you, my friend.
Thank you.
All right, so we'll now move on to our next speaker, another gentleman that contributed to the Power Strategic Influence, our good friend, Mr. Steve Schallenberger. I'll share just a few things with you because he has so much information that I want to make sure that we give him the time to share his thoughts on what his perspective is on life and on influence, because he certainly has used it for many years. He has more than 40 years of experience as a successful business owner and business leader. As a trusted senior executive, professional corporate trainer, and he's a respected community leader. He is a graduate of accounting from Brigham Young University and business from Harvard Business School. He is the author of the national best-selling book, Becoming Your Best, the 12 Principles of Highly Successful Leaders. He has also co-authored with his son, Rob, and CEO, Becoming Your Best Global Leadership, their latest books, Start with the Vision, on Creating Solutions, and Do What Matters Most, a leading authority on productivity, time management, and leadership. I'd like to introduce you all to our good friend, contributor to the Power Strategic Influence book by Gary C Laney, Mr. Steve Schallenberger. How are you, sir?
Hey, so good. How are you doing, Emilio?
Doing fantastic. Glad to have you.
Oh, it's a delight to be with you.
Appreciate you. And I will now turn it over to you, Steve, so you can share your great message, my friend.
Okay, got a little question. Can you see my slides? Is there a way to confirm that? All right. Well, I'm going to assume that is the case. So let's have a little fun with this. First of all, it is a total delight to be together with you today. And I want to thank Emilio and Luis and Gary for this opportunity. I would just say a couple of things. I'm going to talk about strategic influence, and Gary's book is amazing in this regard. And you're going to see a number of themes throughout this whole thing. So, well, let's just see. All right. Well, I'm not sure that I really see that this has given me control of the screen. So I'm just going to go forward without it. I'll just say, first of all, congratulations to you for joining in on this session today, this conference. Every single one of these contributors who are part of Gary's book are amazing. And there is a theme that goes through. You're going to see a thread. And I also want to take a moment and congratulate you. You're the real heroes for being here. You've taken the time to be here. You're still here. And that says more about you than anything else that we're talking about today. And so I want to congratulate you. Way to go on your hunger. Way to go on your desire to make a difference. We talked about that with Gary. That was awesome hearing Kennedy, his comments on that. So everyone, terrific. If there were two things I'd like to invite you to think about today, two words. One, the first one, if you're taking notes, is one idea can totally transform your life. And I'll try to illustrate this in just a moment. So that's the first one. And I hope throughout my comments that you'll be thoughtful of that. What is the one idea that can really change my life for good? And the second idea is one that we've heard from some of the other speakers. Is very powerful. I'm going to spread it out, and you'll see these threads again in Strategic Influence. Love that book. It's an awesome book. Here it is. Gary, good job. And I'm going to talk a little bit about Gary. The second thought is this, is never give up and fail forward with the triumph. And so, first of all, I'd like to just say Gary and I go back to when he was in college, before he went to Northwestern. And he was one of our managers in a company, a marketing company, a sales company, and then became one of our very top managers in the whole company. And so it's been a delight to associate with him. We've had the chance to be all over the world together, going down the Colorado, being in Hawaii, going on cruises in the Caribbean. So those are fun times. What I'm saying is I've had the chance to watch Gary before he really got into it in business, and he has made such a difference. And so, so proud of you, Gary, the companies that you've started, the relationships that you've formed, and that is what you find in this book. And it is so rich. So as you think just about the people that we've heard about today, very powerful. So I would like to just get into it a little about my background. I was raised in the San Francisco Bay Area. There were 8 of us that lived in a 900 square foot home. And when my parents were 14, they were divorced. When I was 14, my parents were divorced. And I was raised in the late 60s. And so it was an interesting world. John F. Kennedy had been assassinated, Martin Luther King, Robert Kennedy, Bobby Kennedy, Vietnam War was going on. And in my very area was Haight-Ashbury, where I was raised. So very interesting time. After my parents were divorced, I felt I was a hard worker. And so I started my first job at 15, and I worked in an Italian restaurant, bussing tables and washing dishes. And then when I was 16, I met a man by the name of Dave Conger. Dave Conger was a real estate broker in the Bay Area. He had 5 different real estate offices and very successful. And so he introduced me to books. He introduced me to the idea of entrepreneurship. And he said, Steve, you should form your company so that you can do our maintenance work. So I formed my first company at 16, Schallenberger Maintenance Company. And we had 4 or 5 employees. It was a blast. This is the example of what Gary talks about in this book, Strategic Influence, the power of relationships and how they can change our life. And Dave Conger was the first of many of those that have changed my life. And they come in different formats. One of the people that Gary and I know is a fellow by the name of Charlie Tremendous Jones. He was a motivational speaker from the Midwest area. He said this great quote. He said, in 5 years from now, you will be the same person you are now, except for 2 things: the books that you read and the people that you meet. And so that's really what Gary is learning, what he's teaching us is and these other speakers, such a big part of our success, it would be the band of our relationships up and down the corridor, from mentors to clients, to our associates and employees, to our families. And all of these contribute to our success, ultimately. Dave Conger was the first. When I was in college, one of my professors was Stephen R. Covey, and he ended up being on our board for 17 years. Imagine the impact that's had on my life and on Gary's life. Gary was there the whole time. And so we had the chance to talk with him and associate with him. We had other really significant mentors that I'll always be grateful for. Now, as I think about this strategic influence, we have our 4th book just came out called Do What Matters Most. So how do you really create and build these ideas of what matters most in your life? I'd like to just suggest 3 things that helps you do it. Number 1 is to have a personal vision. This is literally what creates the direction that you're going to go. And in a moment, I'll give 2 examples of that idea that can be transformational. These are the type of things that are found in your personal vision. Second, that helps you do what matters most consistently is to have annual goals. But it's not just having annual goals, it's doing it through the lens of your various roles in life. This is a powerful way to do it because literally it creates more balance and harmony in your life. And so it's one of the things we invite people to do is reflect on what are your most important roles in life. And this is then where ideas can start flooding into your mind and into your heart. So we're going to finish out 2022 here in the next 45 days. And then we start 2023. The fact is you will never have 2023 over again. And so by each one of your roles, what are the most significant things that you can do in 2023? So I love, once again, hearing the inspiration of these various speakers because they do this. I guarantee they're thinking of this right now. And then the third, we call them 3 high performance habits, is the practice of doing 3-week planning, where you sit back sometime during the weekend and you take anywhere from 20 to 40 minutes and plan out your week. But it's not just planning out like you normally might do, saying, what do I have on my calendar? And what are the checklist items? Start with your roles and ask yourself, what is the most important action I can take for each role this week? And literally what you're doing is scheduling your priorities rather than prioritizing your schedule. And there's such a big difference. And this practice allows you literally to lead a life by design rather than living a life by default. And so these 3 high performance habits will help you do that. And as you think about Gary's book, being accountable, being self-reliant, exercising leadership, these things are all about leadership and typically done in relationships with other people. And that is a strategic influence, but powerful practices that literally will transform your life. I'd like to finish with 2 examples of this today. The first one is a granddaughter named Bella. Bella was going through this process when she was setting her goals at the beginning of the year when she was 11 years old. And her dad is the president of Becoming Your Best Global Leadership, our company that teaches these principles. And she had be an author. He said, well, that's cool, Bella. You want to be an author? What do you want to do? She said, I want to write a children's book. He said, well, okay, that's a great idea. He said, when are you going to do it? Right? That's one of the things we do with goals is we have a timeline on it. She says, well, I don't know. I haven't thought about that. So if people don't put down a time and specifically what they're going to do, what's the risk? The risk is it won't get done because it'll get pushed aside by everything else. And so they set December 15th. And Rob said, well, how about if I help? And he said, I'll take logistics, you do all the writing. She came up with the title, A to Z, the best in you and me. And she decided to have one great trait for each letter of the alphabet. And then they had a full color illustrator for each one of these particular items. And so they went to work. And as the year progressed, she was on track. Rob helped out. And they're getting close to December 15th. And about a week before they finished it up, Rob sent it out to the printer. He said, those are the 2 most expensive books I've ever invested in my life. And a few days later, this is the book that was delivered. A to Z, the best in you and me. Look at this. She's got it done. 11-year-old Bella did it. All right. The next day, they printed 1,000 books. Bella is now 18 years old. She's paid for all of her extracurricular activities. She's printed over 5,000 of these books. It came from one idea. And now I want to finish up. And if she can do it, who else can do it? Yeah, you and me. I'd like to finish with this last story. It has to do with one of our vice presidents, Jamie Thorup. He loves basketball. Last January, his daughter, Alex, was 14. She knew in the fall she was going to go into high school. And she loves basketball. She's played in the City League. She's never had a three-pointer in her whole basketball career in a game. But guess what? At the beginning of 2021, she set a goal. She had the idea of making 5,000 shots in practice on the basketball court. Alex went to work. By the time the season came around, she had 4,730 shots. She didn't quite make her goal. But guess what? The season started. She got on the sophomore team. And during last season, at this time, Alex made 38 three-point shots. Now, I'm just saying, my friends, that when you have an idea and you keep at it, even if you fail, you will change your life and the life of everybody else in your life. So, Gary, thanks for writing this wonderful book of strategic influence. It's an inspiration. It's an idea you had. And look at all the people that it's touching. So it's been a delight to be here. And hopefully you've had an idea that can be useful to you. And we wish you all the best.
Steve, thank you so much for that message. An amazing message. And again, if you are watching today, I really implore you to please pick up the book, because I was fascinated by it myself. The stories, your story, Steve, about how you used influence and some of the just little anecdotes that you had in the book. Oh, I have a surprise for you, Steve.
What's that?
Can you see it?
Oh my goodness. Hey, that's awesome.
It's a little yellowy now because I've had it since the late 80s when he first came out. Charlie, Life is Tremendous with Charlie Tremendous Jones.
Yay!
Yeah.
Oh, Charlie was a program, man. He was something else.
He's amazing. It's amazing how a little book like that has so much power in it, right? I thought you might get a kick out of that, Steve.
Fantastic. Yeah, he's fun.
Yeah, but no, thank you again for the message and everything that you shared with us. We'll make sure to share with our audience. We'll email. We're going to send the final email after this, and we're going to make sure that all of the speakers who have books that are coming out, such as your books, we'll make sure that they know about them so that we can encourage them to go out and purchase it. Because what we're trying to do today is to just really empower people. And that message that you gave today, Steve, I tell you, it was empowering. It was empowering to me.
Thank you.
So thank you so much,
Great
my
to
friend.
be with you. Thank you.
We'll see you soon.
Okay, bye.
All right. Thank you, Steve Schallenberger. Another amazing and fantastic message. Oh, one thing I do want to do, I want everybody to make sure, go get the book, The Power of Strategic Influence. Please go get the book, 10 Success Factors of Highly Influential Leaders. And you see on the back here, there are 12 individuals that contributed to the book. And we have 4 of those individuals today that are on the back of this book: Gary Kennedy, Stephen Schallenberger, Kimberly Carney, Sundula Singh. And then, as you heard, we also heard from Jacqueline Wales, and as well as our good friend, Mr. Marcus Oden. So you really want to pick up this book. I mean, it really is an amazing book. It really can change your life. So please pick up the book. Now, at this point, it is time for us to hear from the gentleman who everyone that spoke today has shared how excited and they have been a part of the book that I just shared with you. This young man is a friend of mine now. I feel honored to call him a friend. We have had some great conversations and learned a lot from this book that he's written. I think that he's such a humble person. I just have to share some just personal things so that you understand that he is such a humble person. You know, he just really just wants to help people. And one thing that I want to share a story about how he told me how he was motivated. He'll expand on this, but I just have to share a little bit about it. He wrote this book. He was inspired to write this book during the pandemic. You know, I mean, imagine, you know, he decided that he would use his time to engage in a project that when so many people were hurting and in pain, he wanted to do something that could help people. And it is a great piece of work. And I'm just going to share a little bit about you with him now so that he can share, because he has an amazing message prepared for you. Gary C Laney, #1 best-selling author, speaker. He's also a startup advisor. He's the CEO and founder of Success Masters, LLC, a serial entrepreneur. He is the owner of Influent Heroes LinkedIn group. And if I may say at this moment, please connect with him on LinkedIn. And this way you can have the opportunity to get that, become a member and receive the newsletter, which is an amazing newsletter. And one thing about it, when you read his newsletter, you can tell that he puts his time into that newsletter. It is not just something that he does. He takes his time to really put some thought into that newsletter, and where you can really, really learn from it on an ongoing basis. He also has an MBA from Northwestern Kellogg School of Management. Success Masters LLC is a holding company that has invested in business networking, online media, e-commerce, and high-tech intellectual property. Gary is a 35-year veteran of sales, marketing, training, and professional service. His background covers domain expertise in business networking, sales process, CRM, business process management, content, document management, and internet search. Domain expertise is well-founded in industries such as retail, e-commerce, financial services, high-tech software, telecommunications, and commercial publishing. He has been involved in more than 20 businesses, including the company that went public where he ran worldwide sales. Most recently, he was CEO and co-founder of Trustegrity, a fast-growing national professional networking company that was launched in 2012. Gary is known for his ability to turn around businesses and to create dramatic revenue growth. As a dynamic speaker, Gary has been recognized as a top presenter, motivating tens of thousands of entrepreneurs, business professionals, and salespeople. He has been doing this for the most part of his life, helping to change people's lives. He has a triple major MBA from Northwestern Kellogg School of Management in Finance, Marketing, and Policy, with a minor in Information Technology. Gary and his wife, Carla, have 6 wonderful children made up of 4 daughters, 2 sons, and 10 grandchildren. My friend, Gary C Laney, I am honored to be here with you and to be able to share the stage with you and to introduce you because you are an amazing person and an amazing man, and you've done some amazing work. And so I leave the stage to you, my friend.
Well, Emilio, I'm humbled by your words. I'm humbled by the people that have presented today. Wow, what an amazing cast of speakers.
Oh my goodness.
How did we do that?
Wow. You know what? Well, I think, Gary, I feel like I've been in a master class today myself.
Well, we have. I mean, look at the masters of influence that have been speaking to us today from different industries, from an amazing background of an experience. I mean, probably dozens and dozens of years of experience that we brought together just in one event here today. So I'm certainly humbled, and I'm grateful. I think more than anything, there's a lot of gratitude on my side that people care enough about what I wrote that has created, for me, it's created friendships. I mean, so Steve Schallenberger talked about relationships. For me, they turn into friendships that are meaningful,
Right.
that actually can, impact your life, give you joy and the satisfaction for what you're trying to do and accomplish. So I thank them. I thank you. I thank you for that one day that we got on the phone call. I was driving down a freeway and we somehow connected on LinkedIn and started talking. And just like some have said about me today, I felt like I'd known you for many, many years. I just immediately liked you so much and wanted to, do something with you. So thank you for taking the chance on me and for supporting me and for making this happen, Emilio. Thank you. Appreciate it.
You're welcome, my friend. It's an honor, and I look forward to what we'll continue to do going forward.
So I have a question. I need to share my screen, right? So I can show my presentation. The question I have, will I also see myself while I do this, or will it just be the screen? So I'm gonna go ahead and share it and we'll get it started. And so hopefully won't have a problem. So, okay, I see myself. So can I somehow get some thumbs up that you're hearing my presentation? Let me go into chat. So I just asked the question, can I see my slides in chat? So if you could please confirm that so I don't get going and then find out that it didn't show. Oh, up. Thank you. Thank you, Amelia. Okay. So I'm going to go ahead and expand this and we'll get going. Okay. Well, I've already said my thank yous, but I want to say it again. So let me just start by thanking Emilio Antonio Guevara. We both speak Spanish and I've had an enjoyable time getting to know him on both levels. A wonderful businessman, a person that goes out of his way to help so many people. So I'm grateful for that friendship. Thankful for you, Emilio. And so I just want to say that as we get started. Thank you to my wonderful friends, Gary Kennedy, Kimberly Carney, Marcus Ogden, Shwamduta Singh, Stephen Schallenberger, and Jacqueline Wells. I'm just so grateful for these connections. Stephen and I, Schallenberger and I, and Gary Kennedy, we've known each other, Stephen and I, for 43 years, Gary Kennedy for at least 40 years. I got to know Kimberly and Shwamduta, who were introduced to me to be potential interviewees for my book during the last year, but what a year it's been and the opportunity to get to know them. And then more recently, Marcus Ogden and Jacqueline Wells. Marcus and I were involved in a project, another book writing project. I got to know him. He's amazing. If you listen to his talk today, you were impressed, you were inspired. What an amazing person he is. And we're talking in this presentation today about starting from scratch. And he went from being an NFL player, having this construction business that was doing well, to having nothing and then rebuilding all over again. And now he's very, very successful again. Jacqueline Wells, very similar. She wrote this amazing book called Fearless Factor. I can't tell you, I've met another woman that has the fearless factor in them more than Jacqueline. She has a background that's just phenomenal. She's overcome many, many obstacles, and she really talks from the heart and from her experience when she talks about Fearless Factor. So thank you to all those. It would really be beneath me if I didn't also thank all those who supported me writing this book. My family was off the charts when it comes to supporting me and helping me with this, being patient with me through all the crazy nights that I had to work and trying to ask everybody to edit my stuff. In particular, I want to thank my wife, Carla, my daughter, Kylie, and also my granddaughter, Katie, who were all writing. During COVID, I sold a business, most of my business assets, and I had some time on my hands, and my daughter, my granddaughter, and my wife were writing a book. And they encouraged me to jump in and follow what they were doing. I've been wanting to write a book for 15 years, and I have 5 or 6 titles, and I knew influence had to be part of it. But when I get started, I really didn't know how it was going to turn out, if I'd even get one chapter done. Luckily, I was able to assemble a few professionals that helped me with the process. We got started, and I had about 6 months to write the book, and it took us about 6 or 7 months to actually finish it. So I was amazed that once you have a good team together, it can help you, assemble stories and edit and get the graphics and things together, just how quickly it can happen. We were pumping out like 1 chapter a week. So thank you to everyone that has supported me in this effort. So I just want to cover 3 topics today, and I'm going to kind of break it out in the following manner. And there's some things in the news that I'm going to share that just came out this morning I think is really important that we talk about. First of all, there is a global crisis. If you haven't paid attention to leadership today, people are leaving their jobs. And it's not happening in a small manner. It's happening in large waves. So I'll give you some statistics in a moment. I also want to get into the influence aspect because my book is called The Power of Strategic Influence. Well, I want to help you understand what strategic influence means versus other types of influence, the perspective you have to have influence, and really the influence development journey that people go on. Every person that has spoken to you today has been on this influence development journey, leadership journey, self-mastery journey, if you will. And so it's amazing to see how they were able to accomplish, overcome, and succeed. And then at the end, I want to just talk about giving back because my book has this overarching, this running thread through it about giving back. And you don't have to be a billionaire to give back. You don't have to wait till the end of your career to give back. I really recommend that you learn how to give back your time, talents, your knowledge from the moment that you start working, if you can. But as soon as you realize how important that is to start doing it. So let's jump into this. I have a hypothesis to present to you. The hypothesis is that I am a leader, therefore I am influential. So ask yourself if that is true or false. Here's the kind of the messaging that's going on today and the reason some people are leaving their jobs. Some leaders today believe that authority in a position is the same as influence. Is that true? Just because you have authority and a position and a title, does that mean you're influential? They believe that their title may perhaps command performance and motivate employees to automatically trust and follow them. So the question that begs an answer here is, does having a title of leader automatically make you influential? And I have to say the answer is no. I proclaim personally that it is not the case, that you cannot proclaim yourself to be influential. It has to come from the people that support you, care about you, hopefully they do, and love you. If you get the support of the people and they proclaim you to be influential, then you truly are. The title of influencer, this could be a whole book, but it's the title of influencer must be earned. It's really critical that we understand that going into it. If I had one theme, one message to give you today, that would be it. So I'm going to share with you some statistics because I believe that there is a true global leadership crisis happening today with all these dozens of management concerns that we have. Some of those are very relevant to our modern day impact of artificial intelligence, remote working that came from COVID, etc. So here we go. Gallup did a survey. And by the way, they've been doing these leadership surveys for the last several decades. They've surveyed over 29 million people. And this statistic is really, really important to understand. They said that 18% of the leaders today demonstrate ability to manage. That should have said only 18% of leaders today demonstrate ability to manage because there's a shocking 82%. I mean, again, this isn't surveying a few people, millions and millions of people and leaders saying that 82% of the managers today are not leading very well. They're not influencing people, which is costing $500 billion a year because companies will stop, they'll restructure, they'll rehire. And the cost of that, of not getting the right people in place, is costing corporations a lot. So we've entered this era, I call it, of great resignation. You've heard that term. And in today's world, the biggest concern is that we have 63% of our employees that are now thinking of leaving their jobs in the next 12 months. Imagine that. I don't have a problem with people leaving their jobs. I've been remote for probably 10 or 15 years. I like being remote. And I think it's great that people want to outsource their abilities, their talents, their expertise. My problem is that they're doing it for the wrong reasons. They're leaving because of poor management. So 50%, it's projected that 50% of the US workforce will be independent workers by 2030. Imagine 1 out of 2 people will be working out of their home or working independent of corporations. That means, and then by the way, companies care about that, we know that. And the leaders are now saying that we should be prioritizing leadership development. Companies today are just cherry picking. You know, they go out, they try to find the best person they can for the job. They bring them in and they hope that it'll work out well. It doesn't many times because they're not trained to be leaders. They don't have the expertise. They don't have the confidence. I like the example of In-N-Out Burger. If you've ever been to their restaurant, In-N-Out Burger does not hire outside. They hire people inside at the bottom, and they work their way up step by step, year by after year, accomplishment by accomplishment, until they become managers of a restaurant. And they're very, very well paid as managers because they know the business in and out. Excuse the pun, but they know it in and out. And so that is the important part, is that companies do start to say, yes, we need to build leaders within. The shocking, again, part and the disappointment is that only 5% of the companies today are actually doing something about that. So hot off the press, just from this morning, I got up early and I found this. I thought I would share it with you because it's spot on with what we're talking about. Research says employees need 3 things to drive their happiness at work. So why are people leaving their jobs? They give 3 reasons and what they want to stay in a job. 1, to be happy. They want to have a meaningful and compelling vision. Employees and associates within an organization want to share the vision of the leader of the company. They want to be involved in that. They want to take some ownership for that. If you can do that, it'll help to make them happy and stay in their job. Number 2 is to tie the purpose. So I'm an employee. Let's talk about that for a second. And I get involved, and I have reasons for why I want to be here, but I want to have a purpose to be feeling like I'm making a difference, like Gary Kennedy talked about today. How do I make a difference? If I can tie my purpose to work, that's going to make a difference for me personally, help me to be happy in my job. And the third part is to foster healthy relationships. You know, sometimes we tell people, you know, focus on your job, don't spend too much time talking. That's true. We want to make sure people don't spend too much time not doing non-business things. But at the same time, if there's no relationship amongst the people in the business, they're not going to be happy. So at the bottom, there's a summary. It says, when you add it all together, research is debunking old myths that happiness and positive emotions don't matter at work. Happiness is important. To be fully engaged, people need to have vision, meaning, and purpose, and healthy relationships. So if you think about that for a second, it's important that we realize there is this crazy, exit going on in all the corporations. We need to bring it back. We need to make sure leaders are engaged, that leaders are prepared, that they're getting developed in their jobs. And one of the things that I did when I was starting to write the books, I decided to stop the process and to find out what leaders are thinking about influence. And more importantly, what are they thinking about what is important as a leader to be effective? So I did a survey to 1,000 business leaders, and we ranked the top competencies that they thought were necessary to be a great leader. And here are the 10. Emilia talked about this newsletter that I have called Influential Leadership. Well, this is what it's focused on. We do deep dives into these competencies of strategic networking, vision sharing, master communication. If a leader can learn how to master more of these, they'll be more effective, be more respected, and people will stay in their jobs. So I wanted to just end this topic, this idea, before I move on to influence, by giving something that was recently shared by Ken Blanchard, the author of the 1 Minute Manager. I met Ken back in the 80s when he was speaking with Stephen Covey in their leadership series, which I went through for an entire year and graduated from. Ken most recently came up with his updated view of what leadership really is, and I think it's so spot on that I had to share it. Excuse me. He says, top-down leadership is a thing of the past. The world needs leaders today who will work alongside their team, use their influence to help people grow, develop, and achieve their goals. And then he summarizes by saying the key to successful leadership today is influence, not authority, not top-down leadership authority. So I'm going to just give you a basis and some structure of what my book's all about. So if you read it, you'll kind of know where you're heading. Number one, I created this sense of what I call the 3 Ps of strategic influence. They include what Stephen Schellenberger was talking about, a personal vision statement. I call it personal value. As you come out of college and you're trying to get a job or you're trying to change jobs, people will assess you based upon the value that you'll bring to the organization. I call that personal value. In order for you personally to be able to expand that idea, you need to write down a personal vision statement that will help you to relate to the motivation of why you're doing what you do. Number 2 is having a purposeful objective. So this is our P of purposeful. So I call them PDFs. In the book, I call them personal driving forces. What are the driving forces that that compel you to do the things you do, that make you want to keep going when things get tough. Those are called purposeful objectives or personal driving forces. And finally, proficiency. Now we're back to the leader, how a leader can become effective and get the respect and the following that they need in order to lead an effective organization. You have to master leadership competencies. I mentioned the 10 that were ranked from the survey I did. The book is structured so that you have 6 spheres. I'm going to show you just briefly, but there are 10 success factors, step by step, how you start with 0 influence and move to a strategic level of influence, which is the highest level of influence you can have. I did 12 exclusive CEO interviews, as you've heard, and some of those CEOs were included in our event today. But the running theme, again, and I'll keep coming back to it during my presentation, is that you have to become an influence hero. If you want to be a hero of influence, you need to learn how to give back. And that's a running theme throughout my book. So quickly, here's kind of the constructs of my book. Number one, excuse me. There are 6 spheres of influence, and they start with having no influence at all, perspective, thinking about what you want to do, having a vision where you want to go, about your life, about your journey, about changing jobs, about doing a project, whatever that perspective is, you have to start with it. So you have a vision. Where you're going. Apologies, I'm going to grab a little drink of water. Next, as Marcus talked about in his talk, was accountability. First and foremost, after you have a vision, you have to learn how to become the owner of your life, as he talked about. To have what I call the ability to accept personal responsibility for your life, for your project, for your job, for your future. And then the way you do that is becoming self-reliant. Then we move to relationships. I'm just going to go around this quickly and I'll give you a little more detail. Gaining relationships helps you to gain reputation. People start to think about you as a resource, as value. Then you're graduated, if you have the interest, to become a leader. And even if you're not a leader with a title, you are a leader to other people. Believe me, by your example, by the things you do in your life. Then we move to opportunity. This is the opportunity where you have developed the skill sets, you have the wherewithal, and now you have the ability to maximize your performance and your career, so that someday you may become what I call a strategic influencer. So the book is broken out this way. It's in the book. I won't go through it in detail, but 6 spheres. Each sphere has chapters in them, 2 chapters per sphere. The first sphere is perspective, and we have 2 perspective points. The next 5 spheres, 2 success factors per sphere. It starts with accountability, accept personal responsibility, be self-reliant, relationships, developing a network of influential connections, forming trusted partnerships, and so on. 3 parts: influence perspective. Part 2 is influence development. Probably the most important part of this book is developing that influence that you can then develop and expand later. And finally is expansion of that influence and the end game of giving back. So people have asked me, why did you do 12 interviews? That's a lot of interviews. Well, I have 12 chapters, and what I really wanted to do, number one, was to show you that I can practice what I preach. I preach in the book that if you follow these steps, that you can have access to highly influential people, that if you get access and include highly influential people in your plan, in your business, in your life, that are strategic to you and you to them, so it's a win-win relationship. Imagine that you will be able to foster success as you could never do on your own. You have to do it with other people, and you might as well do it with skillful people, and that's why I suggest that. It's also because I wanted to, on a selfish basis, wanted to be able to say, how do I find a person, a leader that can exemplify what I'm teaching in this chapter? And so on that basis, it's not selfish, it's being selfless, because I want you to say, well, this is a great principle. Does anybody ever do it? Do they have the ability to do it? And do they have the skill set? Well, each of these it was a matching game for me as I did the interviews, trying to find out, who belongs in this chapter, who could follow this chapter and give insights and exemplify what I'm trying to teach. And that's what that was all about. I certainly recommend you do not skip over these interviews, because every one of them, as you've heard today, have fascinating but insightful stories that can help you do better in your life. So I'm going to move on to this question. I'm not playing the video because for some reason the video wasn't working during our test earlier. So I'm going to give you an explanation of what I'm talking about. In my interview, I had maybe 10 questions that I asked each of the CEOs. The first question I asked each of them was, what if you were dropped penniless into a random, strange city? I want you to think about that for a second. Ask yourself that question. What would happen if you were put somewhere where you have no money and you are by yourself and you had to learn how to survive? How would you survive? How would you later succeed? The people that I interviewed, on a almost consensus, not verbatim, but the general idea, everybody had the same idea, was that if you have to survive, number one, you have to start with that Maslow hierarchy of needs and say, I have to find shelter, food, and safety. I have to have security. I have to be comfortable that I'm okay before I try to do anything else. And then how do you succeed? You succeed by saying, I need to get to know the lay of the land here. I need to find out who's in the community, what's going on, what I can help with, what I can solve for people, how I can add value, and how I can contribute. If you can do that, people will want you to be involved. They'll give you jobs. They'll give you access to their influence. They'll invite you and introduce you to other people. So that's how you do it. You start with a survival mindset. Survival mindset means that whatever life throws at you, you can handle. You've made that commitment up front. You counted the cost before you got into the project, the business, or this new land that you're in that no one in and with zero money. And then secondly, that it takes people helping you helping them to succeed. If you don't, you think you're going to do this by yourself, as Shamduda talked about in her talk, you're just not going to be successful, not to the degree that you would be happy. So I throw the question back at you. What would you do if you had to start all over again? And maybe some of you have. In a new society with no contacts, no money, no influence, how would you survive? There's two perspectives. I think number one, most people probably do panic, at least for even successful people, for a moment. But some people that go beyond that might victimize. They might start blaming other people. Marcus gave an extraordinary message on that point himself when he lost everything. And he wanted to do nothing but blame everybody for the problems that he had. You can let fear consume you. You have to be careful. You can wallow in your worry and you might potentially even give up. So you can't do that. So the perspective we want to have, and that I'm trying to teach in my book, is you begin with this survival mindset. You need to have a positive outlook. When things happen, when there's a problem, you need to assess the problem, look at options, and then say, what is the opportunity here? So I've had people teach me that concept, and I've never forgotten it, including a contractor that helped me build a home once that taught me that concept, and I thought it was a great thing that I've continued to use and teach to other people. Again, as I mentioned before, get the lay of the land, start proactively meeting people, research opportunities, create a plan, and execute. That's how you do it. So I'm going to tell you my start over story, I should say, in 2003. And I think I have some of my family on this presentation, and I think only my wife may know all the details of this, but we were in the process. Let me back up. I'd been in corporate for 25 years, publishing, marketing with Steve Schellenberg for 10 years, and about 17 years in high tech. I was at that point where my family was really growing quickly, and I was missing way too much. And I decided I wanted to stop that, leave corporate, start my own business. I grew up with a family of entrepreneurs, and I thought this is a good time for me to do it. And I decided to do this during the process of building this multi-million-dollar house in Orinda, California. I found what looked like a fabulous opportunity to leave my last corporate job as a VP of sales in a software company to become the president and partner of this training company. And it looked lucrative. It looked like a great opportunity. So I jumped in and moved forward. Well, what I didn't realize is the person I was trying to get involved with had tried this experiment with more than just myself, with other people, bringing them in to see if they might work out, might fit, because he wanted to retire someday. At least that's what he told me. I later learned that it was really his wife that was motivating him to get out of the business, and he really didn't want to. So about 8 months into it, I learned that it wasn't working out at all like I planned. And he came to me one day and says, I'm going to break the contract. He was the major shareholder. He says, I know you're building a house. I'm sorry about that, but you're probably a little screwed here because I'm breaking the contract. I couldn't believe that he actually told me that he told me that I was screwed. And, yes, did I panic initially? Yes, I did. We did work out a transition for a few months, which helped me. But folks, I had left my job. I put most of my money into this project, this one and another project that was on the coast. And I had a 7-figure construction loan and no cash flow after those first few months. So what was I going to do? How was I going to proceed? And I could have these two perspectives. How do I survive? Perspective one, I could panic, just like we talked about. I could victimize. I could start blaming this partner and everybody else. What good was it going to do me? That was really the reality. I could let fear consume me. And don't take this the wrong way, but fear, it can be a good motivator. And I did have fear, and it did motivate me, and I did move forward, but I didn't let it consume me. The last part was, I guess I could call a recruiter, try to get back into high tech, but I had committed, darn it, to stay on the path, to move forward, to be this entrepreneur that I wanted to be. I was going to find a way to keep building this house, not lose our money, and to build a business. So my perspective was right back to the same methodology that I already shared. Have a survival mindset. I grew up with entrepreneurs. My father, my grandfather never worked for anyone. I saw them work. I also worked for companies where I helped build the company. I did have a positive outlook. I knew I had the skill sets. I just had to get into it. I got the lay of the land by reaching out to my network. I proactively reached out to people I knew looking for opportunities. I reached out to brokers that told me about opportunities, about companies I could buy. I collected and assembled a list of about 200 businesses. I researched and I traveled the US for about 3 months looking for opportunities. I was able to narrow down that list of 200 to 10 businesses, and I bought 7. One was a software startup company, and the other 6 were e-commerce companies, very related to each other, by the way. And I thought to myself, something here has to really work really well. I'm going to just get involved, go crazy for the first few months, see what happens, and follow the money. That's what I did. I spent about $200,000 buying these small businesses. And what I'll just tell you what happened by creating a plan and executing and working my tail off for the next 7 years, we built that little tiny start of an entrepreneur, business with 7 little segments into a multi-million-dollar business. And my kids were involved, my wife was involved, and lots of people that I outsourced to. And I learned that networking with people that you can trust was so huge. And also, more importantly, that outsourcing to people on a partnership basis was the way to do it. And I've been very successful at those partnerships. In fact, I decided that I would create a chapter in my book about how to build trusted partnerships. And I've used this principle over and over again, and it really works. And I'm grateful that I was able to figure that out at a time when I could have failed. So let's move on. I'm going to talk about strategic influence now. I want to teach you what the difference is between strategic influence and social media influence. The first story is not strategic influence, and I think you'll get it as soon as I read it. This is a share that was on social media. I actually have the real share from the guy in Facebook that shared it, but I decided not to use his name. So here's the modified version. He says, "I am trying to make friends outside of Facebook while applying the same principles." Okay, so can you get that? This person says, "I'm going to make friends outside of Facebook with real life situations, but use the same principles and techniques. Therefore, every day I walk down the street and I tell passersby that I've eaten what I've eaten, how I feel at the moment, what I've done the night before, and what I will do later and with whom. I give them pictures of my family and my dog and me gardening, taking things apart in the garage, watering the lawn, standing in front of the landmarks, driving around town, having lunch, doing what anybody and everybody does every day. I also listen to their conversations. Live people, remember. I listen to their conversations, giving them thumbs up. I tell them, I like you. And it works just like Facebook. I already have 4 people following me, 2 police officers, a private investigator, and a psychiatrist. I share that because it's very humorous, but I just want you to know what I'm talking about in this book is strategic influence, requires relationships, requires integration of people. My definition is it's combining your purpose, your passion, and your expertise with strategic access to people of higher influence to create and increase your chances of greater multiples of success. So hypothesis 2, can you do that? Can you become successful by aligning yourself, by developing relationships with highly influential people? I want you to ask yourself, imagine, and make the statement in your mind, imagine the possibilities. If you could learn how to cultivate relationships with the right kind of people that are strategic to you, that have influence in your industry and with your business, it can happen if you focus on building a relationship of trust. So growing your network with highly influential people. I have a whole methodology, 5 steps. We don't have time to do that here today. So I'm going to give you the nutshell version of how you do that. 3 steps. 1, be intentional. When you're connecting with people, create a profile. Who are you looking for? What kind of a person matches what you're looking for your business and would help you be successful? Be intentional. Number 2 is to identify and narrow those connections down. So you may have seen the movie Meet the Fockers. Robert De Niro has this humorous way of talking about this circle of family trust, or the circle of family trust. Are you in it or are you out of it? I kind of like to relate that to business, and you're narrowing down these connections into what you call an inner sphere or strategic sphere of influence. Who are the right people that should be in that? You can't have everyone. You can have millions of followers. You can have hundreds of connections, and I guess you can have thousands, but you really literally can only have a handful of people that are strategic to you and you to them, so you can rely on each other and do amazing things. The last part is to build trust, and you do that by giving. And I should say giving first. Don't be calculated about this. When you see an opportunity to help someone, do it. 2 is to solve problems. You will gain respect and trust faster than any other method by helping people solve their problems. And 3rd is by nurturing a relationship, paying attention to it and caring about the people that you're connected to. So again, I told you I have this methodology for how you get to what I call centers of influence. Think of the people in an industry that are the centers of influence, the Elon Musks of the world in the industries that he's involved in. How do you gain access to those people? And is it even possible? Well, I'm going to tell you that it is possible. I haven't yet personally made contact with Elon Musk, but that is he's on my target list. But I'm going to share with you some of these centers of influence that I've had the privilege and honor to get to know, and the benefit and blessings that it's been to me in my life. John Hewitt is number 1. John Hewitt was the founder, co-founder, let's call him, of Jackson Hewitt, even though he did all the work to found that company. And later Liberty Tax and ATAX. For over 50 years, he has been the icon in the tax preparation world. Nobody more influential. No one sold more franchises than John. John and I were introduced several years ago. I got to sit next to him during a dinner. We got to know each other, and I've soon learned just why it is that people listen and follow this man. He is an enormous thought leader when it comes to business, entrepreneurship, because he's helped thousands of people become millionaires in the past because of the businesses he's created and the franchises he's sold. Another one is David Meltzer, a more recent contact. I was introduced to David through a common friend who I interviewed in my book. His name is Brian Esposito. Brian sent an email to David and said, David, I was involved in Gary's best-selling book. It was a great experience. I think you should be one of his interviewees. David got the email within 24 hours minimally. He got back and says, yes, I want to do it. Now, David didn't know me. He's very popular. He's very successful. David was the president of a company called Lee Steinberg. That was the motivation and the inspiration between the movie called Jerry Maguire. So if you've ever watched Jerry Maguire, here's the man, that they inspired this movie and what it was all about. So Brian simply did an email, introduced us, and David said, yes, I'd like to have a conversation. We got to know each other. We did. He was interviewed for my book, for my next edition coming up. I had an opportunity to go out to his premiere of his office hours show. And what an enormous opportunity of this center of influence. And I now have the opportunity to get to know and developing an ongoing relationship with. Kevin Harrington. Now, you've heard of Kevin Harrington. Kevin Harrington was the inventor of infomercials. Super successful. I was gratified that his team were willing to look and review my book. He ended up writing the foreword in my book. He ended up doing a great testimonial and endorsement for my book. So I just want to tell you how important that aspect of him in my life was. So the last one I'll just mention, I can't announce it publicly yet, but I've recently gotten confirmation that a person I was also introduced to, and we've had several meetings, so it didn't happen super quickly. And he's read my book and he loves it. But he is the president of a highly visible and top-ranked Fortune 500 company. I'll be interviewing him at the end of the month. I'm flying to his location. We're having a professional studio. I'm so excited about that opportunity. So 5-step process, I do have it, but I'll just tell you the nutshell version of that is, number 1, finding, and I misspelled this. I put this in this morning. I apologize for introductions, misspell. you have to find a way to make contact with these centers of influence. And it needs to be a warm introduction, somebody that knows them, that trusts you. If you can do that, that gives you the opportunity to get in a platform where you can present yourself. If you're going to stay in front of this person for any length of time, you have to have a purpose to meet, and you better have some value you're bringing to that person. Otherwise, they have thousands of people that would like to meet them, they'd like to have their access, but you're not going to get it unless you do that. And then nurturing your relationship, having a purpose and a value to re-engage. That's it. That's the nutshell version. It's much more complex than this, but I want to at least give you that flavor. So influence development journey. I'm just going to tell you about me just for a minute. So I grew up in a family business. My father never worked for anybody. My grandfather, the same thing. And I show you my father, my brother and I standing in front of our service truck, in front of our store. My dad ended up having about 5 or 6 stores. He developed a small chain. I grew up in this business. For me, it was like getting my first MBA because my dad taught me everything. Every year or two, he would give me a new assignment to do something new. It was such an extraordinary opportunity for me. At the time, I didn't like it because I came from school to work, even in grade school. But later in life, I can't thank my father enough for the opportunity he gave me to be exposed to that and learn so much. I have to tell you a little bit about my dad. My dad was born in 1920, just after the Depression. So he grew up in dire circumstances. My grandfather was a great entrepreneur, had difficulty getting financing and sometimes didn't manage the financing so well. And so my dad was left on his own. He was the oldest of the family. That one time they moved to Salt Lake City, Utah, and my grandfather had bought a grocery store that he thought he might develop into a chain. It was at a time when you didn't get credit cards, it was hard to get loans. And so but my grandfather was trying to build a business, so he gave credit to everybody that came in, it seemed. The problem with that is after a year or so, and no one was doing a good job at collecting the money, my grandfather had to shut the business down. My father was a junior in high school. He was doing super well in school. He was in football. He was an aspiring scholarship athlete. And so when my grandfather told him he was going to shut down the business and go somewhere else, my father said, "No, I want to stay. I'll take care of myself." He says, "If you would let me go and contact the people that owe you money and let me keep 25% of it, I'll send the rest to you, then I will stay. I'll take care of myself." And that's exactly what my dad did. I can't imagine the circumstance, but he did. He rented a space from somebody that had a house and rented a room, kept going to school, collected money after school, and made so much money that he got a scholarship like he wanted in football, was on his way, had the money to pay for the other ancillary expenses that he needed to take care of. Unfortunately, at the time, still a tough time in the 30s, my grandfather came to Dad and said, "I'm building this business. I need financing. How much money do you have?" My father told him. He says, "I need it." And bless my father's heart. I apologize for getting a little emotional here. He gave him the money and he joined the military. And that's how he got into the military. And again, I grew up in this family with kind of a military, situation, and was so gratified after later learning the story about my dad and had so much respect for him. So there's another story I'd like to tell you about someday about Dan Gable, me getting access to him, having the chance to be the escort for him in a wrestling camp in Salt Lake City at a camp, to get to know him personally, to get to wrestle him. It was an extraordinary opportunity for me. Maybe a lot of you don't know a lot about wrestling, but it was one of the toughest things I've ever done in my life. I did it through all my high school, and I was winning just the short end of the story. I was winning about 50 to 60% of my matches before I met Dan Gable, before I went to this camp. And at the camp, having access to him, having access to the best of the best, of the highest expertise, with the right motivation, with the influence, with the type of mindset that this man had. I came through that week of wrestling camp undefeated. For the first time in my life, I was undefeated during the entire camp. I took him so seriously. And then in my senior year, undefeated my entire senior year and later recognized nationally. It came about because I had access to a center of influence in the industry of wrestling. It made such an impression on me, and it showed me what human potential is all about. Imagine going from winning 50% to 100% after just 5 days of having access to someone of a high degree of expertise and a center of influence. I just want to share that story. And finally, Stephen Schallenberger, who has already spoken to you today, I have to take my hat off to him. I have to thank him as a personal friend for 43 years. I did join a company that he was the owner of in 1979 and worked my way up year after year to a district manager, regional manager, area sales director, then VP of sales, and being his right-hand man for several years. Right there, you see a picture in 1983 of Zig Ziglar. I'm on the lower right side of him. And so through this association with Stephen, for the first time in my life, I gained access to people of influence. I told you about my dad and Dan Gable, but this was business influence. I'd never had access to people like that before, and thankful to him for giving me that opportunity. Meeting Zig Ziglar, Stephen Covey, who was an advisor to the company, who became, first of all, a trainer advisor in the capacity I was in growing up in the company, then became an advisor and a personal friend, and so grateful for that opportunity. I had to get to know him, and I've been teaching his principles for 35 years, and it's had a lot of influence on me and also my teachings that I've expanded upon through the time I've been in management. So I want to just end this talk by getting into giving back. I start with giving back and I end with giving back because it's so critical to understand the importance of it. Now listen, I have hats off. And I applaud people that are rich, that are wealthy, that are giving back. All these people on here that I've included in my book, except for Keanu Reeves, who is my new kind of favorite rich person that helps other people. And then Chuck Feeney, for example, who gave everything away. He, following the example of Andrew Carnegie and loving the spirit that he gave of wanting to give away almost all of his wealth, Chuck Feeney decided early in his career that when he became older and wealthy, someday he would give everything away. And true to his commitment, in 2016, he closed down his company that was giving away the money, and went ahead and started living this frugal life that he had envisioned. In fact, he lives in San Francisco today. He's 91 years old and has a very frugal life. He gave away over $10 billion. Amazing. So I can go through these great stories: Bill and Melinda Gates, Warren Buffett, Dolly Parton, who impresses me. She's given away over half her wealth, and Keanu Reeves. But I do want to say that I revere people every single day that are not wealthy, but that work hard to sacrifice and give something of what they have: time, talents, knowledge, and money, and sacrificing money to give away. This last story I'll tell you about is about a woman named Liz Woodward. She was a waitress in a restaurant. This is in 2015. It's 5:30 in the morning. These two firemen come into the restaurant or the cafe. She takes their order, gets to know them, asks them, "What have you been doing?" "Oh, well, we've been on this assignment trying to put out this fire, this warehouse for the last 24 hours. This is the first real meal we've had." Well, Liz was so touched by their service and their commitment that she wrote this note and gave them this guest check. It says, "Thank you. Your breakfast is on me today. Thank you for all that you do for serving others and for running into the places everyone else is running away from. No matter your role, you are courageous, brave, and strong. Thank you for being bold and badass every day, fueled by the fire and driven by courage. What an example you are. Get some rest, Liz." That's a touching story. It's the last story I tell in my book. But the really significant part is that Liz gave when she really had not a lot to give. These two firemen did some research. They looked on social media to learn more about her and found out that she was the one in need. She had a father that was disabled, that needed help to get a wheelchair and to get a van so that he could move around. She could take him places. She had a GoFundMe project that was not doing so well. Well, these two gentlemen, the people that were the firemen that came in that day that she later met up with, went to town, got to know the circumstances that she had, put out the word, and were able to bring in almost $70,000 to help her buy that van, to get that wheelchair, to help her and her father. They've become great friends. It's a great story. You can find it on Facebook if you look it up, Liz Woodward. So I do have to tell you one remaining story, and that is, and I think it's important to give this last part. I'm sorry if I've gone over time a little bit. There's one thing about giving, and there's another part about receiving. And I've learned in my life that yes, it's so important to give. It's so important to give back, but it's also important to learn how to be a recipient of kindness. There's a man named John Durant, and I use his name now because I've written about it and we've done a podcast together. But John Durant, several years ago, about 4 or 5 years ago, I was in Henderson, Nevada. I owned a company called Trustegrity. We had a networking meeting. I finished it. I got in my rental car and I was driving away and noticed that I had a flat tire. That exact flat tire that this man is fixing in the picture. That is not a picture of the man, of John, but I found that as an example. I got out of my car, I had a suit on, I didn't want to get dirty. So I called AAA, which I had a membership of, and said, hey, I've got a flat tire, can you come and fix it? While I'm on the phone, this man shows up, John, without warning, without even knowing where he came from, and said, waving me down, hey, I want to help you. And I said, what do you mean? I'm on the phone with AAA, I'm just fine, thank you, but don't worry about it. He said, no, I come from a family that does things like this. Let me help you. And before I could stop him, he got into the car, pulled out the tire, started to change it, and it took him about 15 or 20 minutes. He did know what he was doing, and he replaced the tire. I reached over, I shook his hand. I'm still on the phone with AAA, and then they distracted me. I turned back. He did tell me his name was John, that he worked for a software company. He was a CTO or something. So very, very quick introduction. But as I turned away to pay attention to this phone call and I turned back, folks, literally he was gone. I don't know how he could have gone so quickly when there were hundreds of yards between me and buildings, but I could not see the guy. I didn't see where he went. For the next 3 months, I dedicated myself to try to find this man named John. I didn't know his last name at the time. I finally got a hold of the property management company. They gave me access to their list. I found a software company that looked like it might be the right one. I walked over to it when I was in Vegas again in Henderson. And I walked in and said, hey, I'm looking for a guy named John that helped me change a tire a few months ago. Does he work here? The woman said, yeah, I think I heard that story. Let me go see if I can find him. She went in the back, found John Durant, brought him back. He was the man. He was the guy I was looking for. The end of the story, though, or the moral of the story, I should say, is that it was important for me to learn that this person wanted to help me. I didn't know him, but it was important for me to allow him to help me because that was what he was all about. And I was the lucky recipient of someone who wanted to give kindness that day. So John, later I found out, years later, just last year, we reconnected. And he told me he had a podcast. He'd been in a terrible car accident. And so I pray for him and that his health will return. But he wanted to give this opportunity to me to have a podcast. And he not one time mentioned what he did for me. I had to bring it up to remind the people I was talking to in this podcast that this is the kind of person that is leading this podcast. Pay attention to him. He's an amazing man. So that's it, folks. I want to just give a parting thought. And that is that influence can do wonders for you if you do it with the right spirit, with the right genuine attitude, if you are doing it strategically to help the other people that you're trying to make contact with. And here's my parting thought. Trust is the foundation of all relationships. Whether in business or private life, trust is the foundation of all successful relationships. And when trust is lost, so is influence. So I just want to thank you all. I think we're gonna have a little Q&A here. It's been such a gratifying experience to be here. Thank you to the wonderful speakers, my friends who are supporting me in this effort, and I'm happy to reciprocate for them anytime. For that, I turn the time back to you, Amelia. Sorry for taking a little bit of extra time.
Hello, Gary. Thank you for that wonderful message. And I really appreciate it's just, I really appreciate the fact that you and I connected, Gary, and that we have been able to hold this event and be able to share with the audience, these thoughts and what you talked about just now. I mean, it's just been a true masterclass on influence today, and you really closed it out. So thank you for all that you've shared today. I'd like to tell our audience that we're just grateful for you to be with us. And so many of you stayed with us throughout the entire program. You don't really see that on virtual, but from what I'm understanding from our virtual event producer and backstage, that most of the people have really stayed with us, Gary. So that's good news.
I appreciate that. Thank you for sticking around. Thank you, everyone.
Yes. There are a couple questions that I want to pose to you, Gary, and if we can have maybe some of the other speakers that are present, if they like to, engage in this conversation as well, we can bring them in so that we can just give the audience just the last few minutes of some thoughts on these questions that I have here. So Lewis,
Awesome.
if you'd like to bring in some of the other speakers, that would be fantastic, that are available.
Oh, my good
And
friends,
we can
Jacqueline, Steve.
Hello, Jacqueline. Good to see you again. And Steve, how are you?
Hey, good.
Good. So we're just going to take about 15 minutes. And hey, Kimberly, are you with us as well?
Kimberly,
Still
thank you
here.
so
I'm in
much.
Seattle. It's early for me.
Oh, true.
I know. Yeah.
You guys made me wake up early.
I know.
And Jacqueline, she's in California, so
Oh yeah, so we're on the same time zone.
We're on the same
Yes.
timeline. We absolutely woke up early for this morning.
Oh, you're wonderful.
Right.
Thank you too.
So on the screen so far, I'm the only Eastern Standard Time person, huh?
Yeah, and as a side note, it turns out that Jacqueline lives in Vallejo, where I was raised.
Wow. How about that?
Whoa,
How
She's
about
already
that?
on LinkedIn.
that's awesome.
Okay, so let's tackle this first question. What is the difference between influence and an influencer as defined today via social media?
Well, I'll jump in really quickly. Well, influence is such a macro concept. It has so many facets to it that you have to define what you're talking about to make sense of it. Influencer in social media is what I call a transactional type of
Right.
opportunity or situation where you pay someone or you provide some benefit to someone who will then in turn make a mention about you, but you in most cases don't know the person. You have no association, there's no relationship. Whereas strategic influence is about just the opposite. How do we find fitted connections, people that are strategic to you, that have the ability to be a long-term relationship? Steven Schellenberger probably is the best at doing this of anybody I know, because I've known him for 43 years. He has surrounded himself, and you, Kimberly, you talked about this because you're doing it right now. But Steven has surrounded himself with these bigger than life people that I had the chance to meet, like Stephen Covey, like Charlie Tremendous Jones that you talked about, and amazing individuals that were thought leaders that made such an impact. But he didn't just hire him to come and speak to us. He developed, Stephen, you talk about the strategic relationships that lasted his lifetime. He's spoken at their funerals. I mean, he knows these people in and out, and they know him as well. So I think that's really the definition, is we're talking about transactional versus something that's really strategic and that's benefits.
You know what? I like to also direct this question to Kimberly. Being in the fashion business and in the beauty business, there seems to be a trend, right, where influencers are like really used to promote the brands. Are these brands going to face some challenges as we continue to move forward, marrying themselves to some of these influencers because of their followings? And when you take that in comparison to if they really developed influence with their consumers. Just a question, a little bit out of a little bit to deal with strategic influence, but just wanted to know in terms of how do you see that, because this person is asking this question. I want to make it so that they understand clearly. Thank you for your answer, Gary. Just wanted to get Kimberly to maybe chime in.
No, I love it. Yeah.
I think, if you look at us, we kind of are a team that really does marketing out of the box, which has been the key to my success. And one thing that we decided early on with our social platforms is, and I think where influence comes in is, we post our brands. So on that B2B side, we post our brands and we've made our social be about our brands. And we in turn post them, then they actually repost us and become the influencer to come back to us. So we're doing this teeter-totter of, influencer. But I think these brands right now, we're in a really challenging time with not only a recession, but also with supply chain and so many